Hey guys! Tonight we're traveling more than 2,000 years into the past, to the vast and remarkable Persian Empire. We will see why you wouldn't last a day in ancient Persia. Before that, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comment where you're tuning from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who is joining us from around the world. At first glance, it may seem like a land of magnificent palaces, peaceful gardens, and bustling trade routes. But beneath its beauty lay a way of life that demanded resilience, patience, and hard work every single day. So, settle in, get comfortable, and let your mind wander as we imagine what it might have been like to spend just one ordinary day in ancient Persia. You may soon discover that, despite all its wonders, you probably wouldn't last a day. A strange new morning. For just a moment, imagine that the familiar sounds of the modern world have quietly disappeared. There is no distant hum of traffic. No glowing phone screen waiting beside your bed. No alarm insisting that your day has begun. Instead, there is only a soft breeze moving through dry grasses, the faint rustle of leaves, and the gentle chorus of birds greeting the first light of dawn. You slowly open your eyes. Above you stretches a pale sky, painted in gentle shades of blue and gold. The stars that filled the heavens only a short while ago are fading one by one, surrendering to the approaching sun. The morning air is pleasantly cool, carrying with it the earthy scent of dust, fresh water, and smoke from cooking fires that have only just been lit. For a few peaceful moments, everything feels strangely calm. Then you remember something rather important. You have absolutely no idea where you are. As your eyes adjust to the growing light, you begin to notice your surroundings. You are lying on a simple woven mat beneath a flat-roofed shelter made from sun-dried mud brick. The walls are thick and sturdy, their rough surfaces catching the warm glow of the rising sun. Nearby, bundles of reeds and neatly stacked clay jars rest against the wall, while woven baskets filled with grain sit carefully covered to keep curious animals away. Nothing here looks familiar. There are no paved roads, no glass windows, no power lines stretching across the sky. Instead, narrow dirt paths wind gently between modest homes built from the same earth-colored bricks. Wooden doors stand slightly open, allowing the cool morning air to drift inside before the day's heat begins its slow climb. In the distance, towering mountains rise above the horizon. Their peaks appear almost purple in the soft light, while lower slopes are scattered with hardy shrubs and patches of dry grass. Beyond them lies an empire so vast that it reaches farther than you can imagine, connecting deserts, forests, rivers, and coastlines across thousands of miles. You have awakened in ancient Persia. Not the Persia of grand legends alone, but the living, breathing empire where ordinary people rise before sunrise, work with steady hands, and measure their days not by clocks but by the position of the sun. If you hoped for an easy vacation through history, this may come as disappointing news. Because before this day is over, you will discover exactly why you probably would not last very long here. But there is no need to hurry. Ancient Persia was a place where life followed rhythms that changed only gradually. Morning became afternoon. Afternoon softened into evening. Seasons turned with quiet patience, just as they had for generations before your unexpected arrival. So, take a slow breath and allow yourself to simply observe. A rooster calls somewhere nearby. Soon another answers. A donkey shifts its weight, its harness gently clinking as it waits beside a wooden cart. Sheep stir inside a low stone enclosure, while goats begin wandering impatiently toward the gate, already searching for breakfast. The village is waking. One by one, people emerge from their homes. An elderly man carefully unwraps his woolen cloak before folding it across his shoulder. A young woman carries a clay jar balanced effortlessly upon her head as she walks toward a nearby water channel. Children, still rubbing sleep from their eyes, quietly help gather firewood without complaint. Nobody appears rushed. Yet everyone seems to know exactly what must be done. You, unfortunately, do not. You rise slowly from your mat, brushing fine dust from your clothes. They feel unfamiliar against your skin. The fabric is heavier than modern clothing, woven from wool and linen by hands that spent countless hours spinning thread and working simple looms. Every stitch represents time. Every piece of cloth has value. Nothing here is disposable. As you take a cautious step outside, the cool earth feels firm beneath your sandals. The village rests on gently sloping ground overlooking cultivated fields that stretch toward the horizon. Even from this distance, you can see careful rows of barley and wheat shimmering softly beneath the early light. These fields are the village's lifeline. Without them, there is no bread. Without bread, there is no village. Without the patient work of countless farmers, the mighty Persian Empire itself could not exist. You pause beside a narrow stream that flows quietly between stone-lined banks. The water is remarkably clear, though its journey has been anything but simple. Long before reaching this village, it traveled through underground channels carved with astonishing skill. These hidden waterways, known today as qanats, carried precious water across dry landscapes where rainfall alone could never sustain entire communities. To the people who live here, every drop matters. Water is collected carefully, shared fairly, never wasted. It is a lesson that becomes immediately obvious as a young boy fills 2 clay jars with deliberate care. Not a single splash escapes onto the ground. He carries the heavy containers home without complaint, moving with practiced confidence despite their weight. Watching him, you realize something unexpected. Life here demands knowledge that begins in childhood. Nobody needs to explain how to gather water. Nobody teaches an adult how to bake bread, care for animals, or recognize changing weather. These are simply things every person grows up learning. You, however, possess none of that knowledge. If someone handed you a bundle of grain, would you know how to grind it into flour? Could you identify which herbs are safe to eat? Would you recognize the warning signs of an approaching sandstorm? Probably not. And that realization settles gently upon your shoulders like the growing warmth of the morning sun. Ancient Persia was one of the most sophisticated civilizations of its age. It governed countless people speaking different languages and practicing different traditions. Royal messengers traveled astonishing distances along carefully maintained roads. Skilled builders raised magnificent palaces adorned with elegant carvings that still survive today. Yet despite all those remarkable achievements, daily life for ordinary people remained wonderfully simple. Simple did not mean easy. Every meal required effort. Every garment represented hours of labor. Every roof overhead depended upon careful maintenance against wind, rain, and relentless sunshine. Convenience, as you understand it, simply did not exist. As the sunlight spreads across the village, golden beams illuminate rising columns of smoke from breakfast fires. The comforting aroma of baking flatbread begins drifting through the air, mingling with the scent of fresh herbs and warm earth. Your stomach quietly reminds you that you have not eaten. But even breakfast, you are about to discover, is far different from anything waiting in a modern kitchen. For now, however, you simply stand in silence, watching another peaceful morning unfold beneath the endless Persian sky. The empire is awake. Its people already know their duties. And your first real lesson in surviving this ancient world is only just about to begin. Before the sun climbs higher. The morning has only just begun, yet the village already feels fully awake. The first golden rays of sunlight stretch gently across the fields, warming the rooftops one by one. Long shadows slowly retreat as the day prepares to reveal itself. Somewhere nearby, a wooden gate creaks open, followed by the steady footsteps of a farmer leading 2 patient oxen toward the fields beyond the village. You watch in silence. No one appears to be wasting a single moment. The people around you move with quiet confidence, not because they are rushing, but because every task has become second nature through years of practice. There is no need for written schedules or ringing bells. The rising sun is enough. Everyone understands that the cooler hours of morning are precious, especially in a land where the afternoon heat can quickly become exhausting. You begin walking along one of the narrow dirt paths, careful not to disturb anyone. The homes stand close together, built from mud brick shaped by hand and dried beneath the Persian sun. Their walls are thick, designed to keep the interiors cool during the hottest months and surprisingly warm during the cold desert nights. Many of the houses have flat roofs, where families sometimes dry fruits, herbs, or grain beneath the open sky. Wooden ladders lean against several buildings, leading upward to these quiet spaces. Small courtyards sit behind sturdy walls, offering shade and privacy for daily life. There is beauty here, but it is not the polished beauty of marble floors or shining glass. It is the beauty of practicality. Every beam of wood has been carefully chosen. Every stone has been carried by hand. Every basket, blanket, and clay jar represents hours of patient work. Nothing exists simply for decoration. As you continue wandering, you notice an elderly woman seated outside her doorway. Her hands move slowly but steadily as she spins wool into thread using a simple spindle. The movement is almost hypnotic. Twist. Pull. Spin. Again and again without hurry. She has likely repeated this same motion thousands of times. Perhaps tens of thousands. Her expression is peaceful, almost meditative, as if the rhythm itself has become a comforting companion over the years. Nearby, another woman kneels beside a large, smooth grinding stone. She pours a handful of barley onto its surface before pushing the heavy upper stone back and forth with practiced strength. The quiet scraping sound blends naturally with the morning birdsong. Grain slowly becomes flour. Flour will soon become bread. Bread will become breakfast. In your own time, flour comes neatly packaged inside paper bags, waiting on supermarket shelves. Here, every loaf begins with countless small acts of labor, each one depending upon the last. The farther you walk, the more clearly you understand a simple truth. Nothing in ancient Persia happens quickly. Life moves with the seasons. The harvest cannot be rushed. Fruit ripens only when it is ready. A woven blanket requires weeks of careful work. A sturdy house may take months to complete. Patience is not merely admired here. It is necessary. As you reach the edge of the village, the land opens before you. Fields stretch across the gentle valley in carefully organized plots. Some glow softly with ripening barley, while others are planted with wheat or tended vegetable gardens. Beyond them stand orchards of pomegranate, fig, and date palms, their leaves shimmering in the growing light. A narrow irrigation channel winds between the fields, carrying precious water with remarkable efficiency. 2 young boys carefully inspect the channel's stone edges. One removes a small branch that has drifted into the water. The other quietly smooths a patch of loose earth where the bank has begun to crumble. Neither seems older than 12. Yet both understand that even a small blockage could reduce the flow of water to the crops farther downstream. Responsibility begins early here. Every member of the community contributes. You wonder how many modern children would recognize the importance of such work. Probably very few. The same thought crosses your mind about yourself. Could you identify barley before it is harvested? Would you know when wheat is ready to cut? Could you repair a leaking irrigation channel using nothing more than stones, mud, and patience? The honest answer is almost certainly no. And that is exactly why surviving here would prove so difficult. Ancient Persia rewards experience. Knowledge is passed from parents to children, neighbors to neighbors, generation after generation. There are few instruction books. No online tutorials. No quick answers waiting in your pocket. If you do not know something, you learn by watching those around you. Or by making mistakes. Some mistakes are harmless. Others can cost an entire harvest. As the sun climbs a little higher, warmth begins replacing the cool comfort of dawn. The air grows noticeably drier. A gentle breeze carries tiny grains of dust across the fields, though no one seems bothered by it. Wide sleeves and light head coverings protect people from both sunlight and drifting sand. You suddenly become aware of your own discomfort. The clothing you woke up wearing no longer feels quite right. Perhaps it hangs awkwardly. Perhaps it lacks the proper belt or cloak. Perhaps it simply marks you as someone who does not belong. No one stares openly. That would be considered impolite. Yet curious glances occasionally drift in your direction before returning to the work at hand. You are not invisible. In a village where everyone knows one another, a stranger is immediately noticed. Hospitality is an important part of Persian life, but strangers are still expected to behave with courtesy and respect. That means speaking gently, waiting patiently, accepting kindness with gratitude rather than expectation. These customs may sound simple, yet they shape nearly every interaction. As you continue your slow walk, a pleasant aroma reaches you once again. Fresh bread. The smell grows stronger with every step. Following it, you arrive at a small communal oven built from clay. Its rounded shape resembles a smooth dome rising from the earth. A baker carefully presses flattened circles of dough against the hot inner walls before stepping back. Within moments, the bread begins to bake. The scent is warm, rich, and wonderfully comforting. Nearby, woven baskets overflow with yesterday's loaves, still perfectly edible despite their firmness. Nothing is wasted. Food requires too much effort to prepare. A few dates rest inside a wooden bowl. Fresh herbs have been gathered before sunrise. Soft white cheese waits beneath a damp cloth to keep it cool. Breakfast is modest, simple, nutritious, designed to provide energy rather than luxury. You cannot help smiling. Some things, it seems, have changed very little across thousands of years. People everywhere appreciate warm bread shared in good company. The sounds of quiet conversation drift gently through the morning air. Children laugh softly. An old man tells a story while carefully breaking bread into smaller pieces. A shepherd whistles to his flock as they begin moving toward distant grazing land. The village feels peaceful. Not silent, but peaceful in the way only places without machines can be. Every sound belongs. Birdsong, footsteps, flowing water, crackling firewood, the occasional bray of a donkey. Together they create the soundtrack of an ordinary Persian morning. And perhaps that is the greatest surprise of all. History often remembers kings, generals, and magnificent palaces. Yet the empire itself depended far more upon mornings like this one. Upon farmers tending fields, bakers preparing bread, children carrying water, artisans shaping clay, families beginning another ordinary day. Their names have mostly been forgotten. Their work has not. Without them, no road would have been maintained, no palace supplied, no city fed. The greatness of ancient Persia rested quietly upon the steady efforts of countless ordinary people who simply rose each morning and did what needed to be done. You look once more across the valley. The sunlight now bathes the landscape in brilliant gold. The cool freshness of dawn has almost disappeared. The real work of the day is about to begin. And if you hope that breakfast meant a chance to relax, ancient Persia has one more surprise waiting for you. Because once the last crumbs of bread have been eaten, everyone young and old alike returns to their duties. Everyone, that is, except you. You are still searching for your place in a world that expects every pair of hands to be useful. Dressing like a Persian. The last pieces of warm bread disappear from the small woven baskets, and almost as quietly as the meal began, it comes to an end. There are no lengthy goodbyes. No lingering over steaming cups of coffee. No one checks the time, because no one needs to. The sun itself has already announced that the working day has begun. People rise one after another, brushing a few crumbs from their clothing before returning to the tasks waiting patiently for them. A shepherd gathers his staff and whistles softly to his flock. A potter carries and fired clay vessels into the growing warmth, hoping the morning sun will begin drying them before they are placed inside the kiln. Children hurry after their parents with small baskets and wooden tools, eager to help in whatever ways they can. Within only a few minutes, the little gathering has almost disappeared. You remain where you are, watching the village settle into its familiar rhythm. For a brief moment, you wonder what you are supposed to do next. The answer, unfortunately, is not obvious. Before anyone can work, there is something rather important you have overlooked. Your clothing. It is easy to forget how much clothing says about a person. In your own time, people often choose clothes based on fashion, comfort, or convenience. A quick look into a wardrobe offers dozens of possibilities. Shirts made by machines, shoes assembled in factories, fabrics from every corner of the world. Ancient Persia offers no such abundance. Every garment begins as raw material gathered by careful hands. Sheep must first grow their wool. Flax must be harvested before linen can be woven. Threads are spun one by one. Fabric is woven patiently on wooden looms. Then each piece is measured, cut, stitched, repaired, and often passed from one generation to the next. Nothing is made carelessly. Nothing is wasted. As you glance down at your own clothes, you suddenly realize how unusual they appear. Perhaps the stitching is unfamiliar. Perhaps the colors seem strangely bright. Perhaps the cut simply does not resemble anything worn in this village. Whatever the reason, your appearance quietly announces that you do not belong. No one says so aloud. The people of Persia are known throughout the ancient world for their courtesy, particularly toward travelers who behave respectfully. Hospitality is considered an honorable tradition, and a weary guest is rarely ignored. But even kindness cannot hide curiosity. Several villagers glance toward you before politely looking away. You can almost imagine the questions passing through their minds. Which province has this traveler come from? What language does he speak? Why is he dressed so strangely? Has he lost his caravan? Has he traveled alone? For the moment, your silence keeps those questions unanswered. A gentle breeze passes through the village, carrying with it the scent of dry grass and warm earth. It also reminds you of something else. The morning is becoming warmer. Persia is a land of remarkable contrasts. In the mountains, winters can be bitterly cold. Across the high plateaus, mornings often begin with crisp air. Yet by afternoon, especially in the warmer regions, the sun can become relentless. Clothing is not simply about appearance. It is protection. Loose garments allow air to circulate around the body, helping people remain cooler beneath the intense sunlight. Long sleeves shield the skin from harsh rays, while light-colored fabrics reflect much of the day's heat. Even the simplest outfit has been shaped by centuries of experience. You notice an elderly farmer adjusting the wide cloth wrapped loosely around his head. It serves many purposes. It protects him from the sun. It catches sweat before it reaches his eyes. When dust rises with the wind, it can be pulled gently across the mouth and nose. Such a simple piece of cloth, yet so remarkably practical. Nearby, another man tightens the leather belt around his long tunic before lifting a bundle of farming tools onto his shoulder. The belt is more than decoration. It keeps the loose garment secure while allowing small tools or pouches to hang comfortably at the waist. Without it, working in the fields would become awkward and uncomfortable. Every detail has a purpose. Even footwear reflects the realities of daily life. Most villagers wear simple leather sandals or sturdy shoes suited to rough ground. Roads are dusty, fields uneven, and rocky paths common throughout much of the empire. Walking is the ordinary way of life. Few people own horses. Fewer still ride them every day. The average Persian expects to spend hours on foot, whether tending crops, visiting neighbors, or traveling between villages. You silently calculate how many steps you usually take in a normal day back home. Perhaps a few thousand. Many here will easily double or triple that distance before sunset. The realization is quietly humbling. As you continue observing those around you, another detail begins to stand out. Their clothing is well cared for. Not necessarily new. Not especially luxurious. But clean, neatly repaired, and carefully maintained. A small tear is stitched before it grows larger. A worn sandal is repaired instead of discarded. A faded cloak continues serving faithfully through many seasons. Possessions are expected to last. There are no shops filled with endless replacements. If something breaks, someone fixes it. If fabric wears thin, it is patched. If leather cracks, it is softened with oil and stitched once more. Entire professions exist because people repair rather than replace. This quiet habit of preservation touches nearly every part of Persian life. Wood is valuable. Metal is valuable. Cloth is valuable. Even broken pottery often finds a second purpose. Nothing leaves this world before giving everything it can. Standing in the middle of the village, you begin to understand why your modern expectations would create problems almost immediately. You are accustomed to abundance. The people around you are accustomed to stewardship. There is a difference. One encourages easy replacement. The other teaches lasting appreciation. The contrast is subtle, yet profound. The sunlight continues climbing higher. Shadows grow shorter. The comfortable coolness of early morning begins surrendering to gentle warmth. Several women spread freshly washed garments across ropes stretched between wooden posts, allowing the dry Persian air to finish what careful washing has begun. Water has been used sparingly. Soap, where available, is simple and precious. Laundry itself is an act requiring planning rather than routine convenience. Watching these quiet moments, you realize something unexpected. The clothing of ancient Persia tells stories. A carefully embroidered sleeve may reveal hours of skilled craftsmanship. A faded cloak may have traveled hundreds of miles. A patched tunic speaks of years of faithful use rather than poverty. Every thread carries a memory. Every repair reflects patience. Every garment reminds its owner that comfort is something earned through labor rather than purchased with ease. You gently brush a little dust from your sleeve. It settles back almost immediately. Dust, after all, is one of the few companions every traveler in Persia learns to accept. The empire is vast. Its roads are long. Its winds carry fine earth across mountains, valleys, and deserts alike. No amount of careful cleaning can entirely escape it. The villagers certainly do not try. Instead, they simply carry on with quiet dignity, accepting nature as another part of everyday life. Perhaps that is one of the greatest lessons this ancient world has to offer. Not every inconvenience demands a solution. Some simply ask for patience. As the village grows steadily busier around you, you begin to feel slightly less like an observer and slightly more like a participant in this extraordinary place. There is still much you do not understand. The customs, the language, the expectations. But with every passing moment, ancient Persia feels a little less like a distant chapter in a history book and a little more like a living world filled with ordinary people quietly making their way through another peaceful morning. And before long, another simple necessity will call for your attention. Because dressing appropriately may help you look the part. But finding enough food and clean water to sustain an entire day in this remarkable empire is a challenge all its own. Bread, dates, and the value of every drop. The morning continues at its unhurried pace. The village is now fully awake, yet it never feels noisy. There are conversations, certainly, but they are spoken in calm voices. Wooden wheels creak as small carts begin their journeys. A few goats wander lazily through narrow lanes before being guided toward nearby hills. Birds hop between rooftops, searching for stray grains that may have fallen during the preparation of breakfast. The sun has climbed a little higher. Its warmth is pleasant now, but everyone knows it will not remain so forever. This is why so much of the day's work begins early. You notice that no one seems to be carrying food with them in great abundance. There are no heavy baskets filled with elaborate meals, no overflowing tables waiting in the fields. People eat simply. Not because they lack imagination, but because simplicity is practical. A farmer cannot easily plough a field after a feast. A shepherd cannot climb rocky hills while carrying an enormous meal. Food is meant to provide strength, not distraction. You find yourself thinking about the modern breakfast. Perhaps you imagine fluffy pancakes covered in syrup, bowls of colorful cereal, buttery toast, fresh fruit from distant countries, or steaming mugs of coffee prepared in a matter of minutes. Such a breakfast would seem astonishing here. Not impossible, perhaps, for the wealthiest members of society to enjoy a generous variety of foods on special occasions. But for ordinary villagers, breakfast is modest. A round loaf of barley or wheat bread rests upon a woven cloth. Dates, sweet and soft beneath the morning sun, are passed from hand to hand. Fresh herbs add a gentle fragrance. Goat's milk or sheep's milk has been turned into simple cheese. Sometimes there are olives. Sometimes figs. Sometimes walnuts gathered during the proper season. Nothing is extravagant. Yet everything has value. A single loaf of bread represents months of work. First the field had to be prepared. Then the seed planted. The irrigation channels maintained. The weeds removed. The grain harvested beneath the heat of summer. Afterward it was threshed, winnowed, ground into flour, mixed carefully with water, kneaded patiently by hand, and finally baked inside a clay oven. Only then did it become bread. Looking at one humble loaf, you begin to understand that every meal carries the memory of countless hours of labor. Perhaps that is why no one wastes even the smallest crumb. You watch a little girl carefully collect tiny pieces of bread that have fallen onto a cloth. She smiles as she places them back into the basket. No one laughs at her carefulness. In fact, no one seems surprised at all. Food deserves respect. It has been earned. You cannot help wondering how many slices of bread are casually thrown away every day in the modern world. The comparison is difficult to ignore. Nearby, an elderly man sits beneath the shade of a small tree. His breakfast is remarkably simple. A piece of bread, a handful of dates, a small cup of watered wine. He eats slowly, almost thoughtfully, as though there is no reason to hurry. And perhaps there isn't. Meals in ancient Persia are often shared with quiet conversation rather than constant activity. There are no newspapers to read, no glowing screens demanding attention. The meal itself becomes a peaceful pause before the work of the day continues. You realize something else. There is very little sugar. No brightly colored sweets. No chocolate. No packaged snacks. The sweetness people enjoy comes mostly from nature itself. Dates are treasured not only because they taste pleasant, but because they store well and provide valuable energy. Honey, when available, is precious. Fruit follows the seasons. When it is gone, people simply wait until nature provides it once more. Patience shapes even the menu. As you continue observing, your attention shifts toward something even more important than food. Water. At first glance, it seems ordinary enough. Clay jars stand beside nearly every doorway. Women and children carry containers balanced with remarkable skill. A narrow irrigation channel glistens softly beneath the morning light. Yet the more you watch, the more obvious its importance becomes. Not a single drop is treated carelessly. A young boy washes his hands using only a small amount poured carefully from a jug. The remaining water is collected rather than discarded. Nearby, another family uses water that has already served one purpose to dampen dusty ground around their courtyard. Nothing is wasted. You kneel beside a clay jar resting in the shade. Its outer surface feels surprisingly cool beneath your fingertips. Tiny amounts of water slowly seep through the porous clay and evaporate into the dry air. This simple process cools the water inside without any machinery. No electricity. No refrigerator. Only an understanding of nature developed through centuries of experience. You smile quietly. Sometimes the simplest ideas are also the most brilliant. A gentle breeze stirs once more, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of warm earth. The day is becoming hotter. You instinctively think about reaching for a bottle of cold water. Then you remember. There are no plastic bottles here. No convenience stores. No kitchen taps. Every drink has been carried from a spring, a well, or an underground canal with patient effort. The farther you travel across Persia, the more precious water becomes. In some regions, villages exist only because remarkable engineers created underground tunnels that carried mountain water across many miles of dry land. These canals are among the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world. Hidden beneath the earth, they protect precious water from the burning sun while delivering life to fields, orchards, and communities that otherwise could not survive. Most travelers passing overhead would never realize the extraordinary work lying beneath their feet. Generations helped dig them. Generations maintained them. Entire villages depended upon them. You begin to appreciate how easily modern people forget the effort hidden behind everyday comforts. Water arrives with the turn of a handle. Food appears beneath bright supermarket lights. Bread waits neatly sliced inside plastic bags. Ancient Persia asks something different. It asks you to notice where every necessity comes from. To understand the labor behind every comfort. To appreciate abundance without expecting it. As the morning grows warmer, several workers prepare to leave for the fields. Each carries only what is necessary. A small pouch of food. A water skin. Simple tools. Nothing more. Traveling lightly is simply practical. The work itself will require enough strength. There is little room for unnecessary burdens. You watch them disappear slowly along dusty paths that wind through golden fields. Soon the village becomes quieter once again. Only a few elderly residents remain near the homes, continuing their weaving, spinning, and repairs beneath patches of welcome shade. The peaceful rhythm of the morning settles around you. There is something deeply comforting about its predictability. The people here know exactly what today will ask of them. And tomorrow will likely look very similar. In a world without constant change, there is quiet reassurance in routine. Perhaps that is one reason these ordinary moments feel so timeless. Although more than 2,000 years separate your life from theirs, the simple act of sharing bread, protecting precious water, and beginning the day with purpose feels surprisingly familiar. Human nature has not changed nearly as much as our technology. Yet one truth becomes impossible to ignore. By now, the morning is nearly over. The pleasant coolness has faded. The real heat of the Persian day is waiting just beyond the horizon of noon. And if breakfast seemed simple, the work awaiting every able pair of hands will prove far more demanding. For in ancient Persia, the day does not truly begin when you wake. It begins when you step into the fields, the workshops, and the roads that keep one of history's greatest empires alive. Life on the farm. By the time the last of breakfast has been cleared away, the village has changed almost without you noticing. The quiet conversations that drifted through the narrow lanes have become fewer. The smell of freshly baked bread still lingers in the air, but it is slowly replaced by the warm scent of dry earth awakening beneath the rising sun. Doors that stood open during the cool hours of the morning are gently closed to keep the coming heat outside. The village itself seems to exhale one last peaceful breath before another day of steady work truly begins. You remain standing beneath the shade of a mud brick wall, watching the people prepare to leave. Some carry wooden hose polished smooth by years of use. Others shoulder simple baskets woven from reeds gathered along riverbanks. A few lead patient oxen toward the fields, their heavy hooves pressing soft prints into the dusty ground. Nobody appears hurried. Yet nobody delays. There is an understanding shared among everyone here that certain tasks must begin before the sun reaches its highest point. In ancient Persia, time is measured less by hours than by light, warmth, and the changing sky. Without saying a word, a middle-aged farmer gestures for you to follow. Whether he sees you as a curious traveler or simply another pair of hands willing to help, you cannot be certain. Still, his invitation is warm, and you gladly fall into step beside him. Together you leave the village behind. The narrow path winds gently downhill, bordered by small patches of wild flowers that somehow thrive despite the dry climate. Tiny lizards dart between warm stones before disappearing into narrow cracks, while birds circle lazily overhead, searching for insects disturbed by passing footsteps. Ahead, the farmland stretches across the valley like a carefully woven blanket. From a distance, the fields appear almost effortless in their beauty. Gentle shades of green and gold ripple in the morning breeze, broken only by narrow irrigation channels that sparkle beneath the sunlight. But beauty, you are beginning to understand, often hides extraordinary effort. Every field before you exists because countless generations refuse to surrender to the harshness of the landscape. Rain alone could never sustain so many people. The Persian plateau is a place of remarkable contrasts. Some regions receive generous rainfall, while others remain dry for months at a time. Summers can be long and unforgiving, and without careful planning, entire harvests could disappear beneath the relentless sun. The people of Persia learned this lesson long ago. Rather than fighting nature, they learned to work alongside it. As you walk farther into the valley, the farmer kneels beside a narrow trench filled with gently flowing water. He smiles proudly before motioning toward it. At first glance, it seems unremarkable. Only a shallow channel carrying clear water through the fields. Yet this quiet stream represents one of the greatest achievements of ancient engineering. Long before reaching this village, the water began its journey high in distant mountains. There, skilled workers dug deep wells until they reached underground water hidden beneath layers of rock and soil. From those wells they carved long, gently sloping tunnels, sometimes stretching for many miles beneath the earth itself. These remarkable tunnels are known as qanats. Hidden from the burning sun, they carry cool water safely across dry landscapes, losing very little to evaporation. Without them, villages like this one could never exist. You imagine the effort required to create such a system. Thousands upon thousands of stones removed by hand. Dark tunnels carved without modern machines. Careful measurements taken with simple tools and remarkable patience. Some qanats required years to complete. Others continued serving communities for centuries. It is easy to admire great palaces and towering monuments. Yet perhaps the greatest gift the Persian people ever gave themselves was something far quieter. Reliable water. The farmer reaches into the channel and gently removes a small branch that has drifted into the current. It is such a small gesture that many would overlook it. But he knows that even tiny obstacles can reduce the flow farther downstream. Maintenance is never truly finished. Every day brings another small task. Every season demands fresh attention. In ancient Persia, survival often depends not upon dramatic acts of heroism, but upon thousands of ordinary responsibilities carried out faithfully. You continue walking until the path opens into a wide barley field. Golden heads of grain sway softly beneath the breeze, creating waves that shimmer beneath the morning light. Several workers are already there. Some inspect the crops carefully, searching for signs of insects or disease. Others repair simple fences built to discourage wandering animals. A pair of young brothers gather loose stones from the edge of the field, piling them neatly into a low wall that has stood for generations. Even the children contribute. Not because they are forced beyond reason, but because work is simply part of growing up. Each season teaches a different lesson. Planting, watering, harvesting, storing. Nothing remains exactly the same for very long. The farmer hands you a small bundle of barley. Its stalk feels surprisingly rough against your fingers. You study the tiny grains with curiosity. In your own time, breakfast cereal arrives in colorful boxes. Bread appears neatly sliced on supermarket shelves. Rarely do you think about the plant from which it all begins. Here, every family knows the appearance of barley long before it becomes flour. Knowledge begins in the field. You look across the valley once again. There are no noisy tractors crossing the land. No engines rumbling through the morning. Instead, the only sounds are those of people working steadily together. The rhythmic scrape of a wooden hoe. The distant call of a shepherd. Birds singing from nearby trees. Water flowing gently through its stone-lined channel. The occasional lowing of an ox. It is peaceful, almost meditative. Work here is certainly demanding. Yet it unfolds at a pace shaped by nature rather than machinery. The farmer pauses beneath the shade of a lone tree and offers you a drink from a leather water skin. The water is cool despite the growing warmth. You accept it gratefully, taking only a careful sip before handing it back. He nods with quiet approval. Even without speaking the same language, gratitude needs no translation. As the sun climbs steadily higher, the heat begins making itself known. The cool freshness of dawn has vanished entirely. You feel warmth gathering across your shoulders and face. The workers seem hardly bothered. Loose clothing shields their skin. Wide head coverings soften the sunlight. Years of experience have taught them exactly how to pace themselves. You, however, are already beginning to feel tired. And it is not even midday. The realization arrives gently. You have spent only a few hours in ancient Persia. You have not harvested a single field. You have not carried heavy water jars. You have not walked for miles with a caravan. You have simply observed. Yet already the landscape, the climate, and the constant expectation of useful work are asking more of you than an ordinary modern morning ever would. Perhaps this is the first true reason why you might not last a single day here. Not because the people are unkind. Quite the opposite. Nor because the land is without beauty. It is breathtaking. The challenge lies elsewhere. Life in ancient Persia leaves very little room for idleness. Every season brings work. Every family depends upon shared effort. Every loaf of bread begins here, beneath the wide Persian sky, with patient hands tending fields that have sustained generations. As you stand quietly among the barley, watching the breeze ripple across the valley like waves upon a golden sea, you begin to appreciate that the greatness of the Persian Empire was never built by kings alone. It was built by ordinary farmers who rose before sunrise, cared for the land with unwavering dedication, and trusted that today's labor would become tomorrow's harvest. And while the fields stretch peacefully before you, another world of equally patient craftsmanship waits just beyond the village. For not everyone in Persia works the land. Some shape clay. Some weave cloth. Some hammer glowing metal into useful tools. Their workshops, filled with the quiet rhythm of skilled hands, will soon reveal another side of everyday life in this remarkable empire. The artisan's workshop. Leaving the open fields behind, you take one last look across the gently rolling farmland. The barley sways quietly beneath the strengthening breeze, its golden heads catching the light of the late morning sun. Farmers continue their work with the same steady rhythm you have watched all morning, rarely stopping except to take a careful drink of water or exchange a few quiet words with a neighbor. It is a peaceful sight. One that could easily convince you that every person in ancient Persia spent their days tending crops beneath the open sky. But an empire as vast as Persia depended on far more than successful harvests. Fields could feed a population, but they could not build houses. They could not shape water jars. They could not weave warm clothing or forge strong tools. For those things, another kind of labor was needed. The labor of skilled hands. As you return toward the village, the sounds around you begin to change. The wind moving through grain gives way to the soft tapping of wood against clay. The distant calls of shepherds are replaced by the gentle scrape of stone polishing stone. Somewhere ahead, a hammer strikes metal with slow, deliberate rhythm. Not loudly. Not hurriedly. Just steadily. Almost like the quiet ticking of a clock. The narrow streets feel busier than they did earlier in the morning. While many farmers remain in the fields, others have stayed behind to practice trades passed down through their families for generations. You soon arrive at a small courtyard shaded by a vine-covered wooden frame. The air here feels pleasantly cooler. Sunlight filters gently through clusters of broad green leaves, creating moving patterns across the packed earth below. Beneath the shade sits an elderly potter. His beard has turned almost completely white, yet his hands move with remarkable confidence. Before him rests a simple pottery wheel. Unlike the electric wheels used by modern artists, this one turns only through the steady movement of his foot. Round and round it spins. Never too quickly. Never too slowly. He places a small lump of damp clay at its center. For a moment, it appears to be nothing more than a shapeless piece of earth gathered from the riverbank. Then his fingers begin their quiet work. The clay rises. It widens. It narrows again. Within moments, an elegant water jar begins to emerge as though it had always been waiting patiently inside the clay itself. You find yourself holding your breath. Not because the work is dramatic, but because it is so wonderfully calm. Every movement is gentle. Every adjustment almost invisible. Years of experience guide hands that no longer need to think about what comes next. You realize that mastery often looks effortless. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. This simple water jar represents decades of practice. Perhaps the potter first learned by watching his father. Perhaps his father learned from his own father before him. Knowledge flows quietly through generations, much like the water flowing beneath the Persian earth. When the jar is complete, the potter carefully lifts it away. Its surface is still soft enough to mark with a fingertip. Later it will dry beneath the warm air before spending many hours inside a kiln heated by carefully gathered firewood. Only then will it become strong enough to serve a family for years. Nothing here happens instantly. Patience remains the invisible companion of every craft. You continue walking through the village until another familiar sound reaches your ears. Clack. Pause. Clack. Pause. The sound repeats with steady precision. Inside a nearby workshop, a woman sits before a large wooden loom. Threads stretch tightly from one beam to another, forming neat parallel lines that seem almost endless. Slowly, she guides a shuttle carrying colored thread through the narrow spaces. Back and forth. Again and again. Each movement is almost hypnotic. You watch for several minutes before realizing that only a small section of cloth has been completed. A single garment may require many days of weaving. A larger blanket could take weeks. Beautiful patterned textiles might demand months of careful attention. Suddenly, clothing no longer seems like an ordinary possession. It becomes something far more meaningful. Every thread represents time. Every pattern reflects patience. Every finished piece carries the quiet dedication of the person who created it. Across the courtyard, another artisan works with wood. He is shaping the handle of a farming tool using only a sharp iron blade and careful hands. Thin curls of fragrant wood fall gently to the ground with each stroke. There is no wasted motion. He removes only what is necessary. The finished handle must fit comfortably in the hand of the farmer who will use it every day. Too thick, and it becomes tiring. Too thin, and it may break beneath heavy work. Even the smallest details matter. Nearby, a young apprentice watches carefully. He does not interrupt. He does not ask endless questions. Instead, he learns by observing. From time to time, the older craftsman quietly hands him a tool or allows him to smooth a small section of wood. Little by little, skill is earned. No one expects perfection on the first attempt. Experience arrives slowly, like the changing seasons. As you wander farther through the village, you begin noticing something remarkable. Very little is thrown away. A cracked basket is repaired with fresh reeds. A broken leather sandal receives a new strap. A chipped clay bowl is sometimes used to hold grain rather than food. Even worn clothing is carefully patched instead of discarded. The people of ancient Persia live in a world where nearly every object has required someone's labor. To waste that labor would seem almost unthinkable. It is a quiet philosophy. One that asks people to value things not because they are expensive, but because they represent time, effort, and skill. You cannot help comparing this with your own world. How many objects in your home could be repaired if someone simply knew how? How many are replaced because replacing them is easier? Ancient Persia offers a different answer. Repair first. Replace only when there is no other choice. The village itself seems to breathe with this patient attitude. Nothing is flashy. Nothing demands attention. Yet everywhere you look, there is evidence of careful craftsmanship. Doors fit neatly into their frames. Clay walls have been smoothed by practiced hands. Storage jars line shaded rooms with quiet dignity. Simple woven mats cover cool earthen floors. Everything has been made for a purpose. Beauty appears almost by accident, growing naturally from usefulness. The morning slowly drifts toward midday. The sunlight grows brighter, casting shorter shadows across the courtyards. Many artisans pause only briefly to wipe their hands or enjoy a small drink of cool water from a clay vessel. Then they quietly return to their work. There is comfort in repetition. One basket after another. One blanket after another. One water jar after another. It may sound monotonous to modern ears. Yet for those who live here, these familiar rhythms provide stability. They know what the day expects. They know the value of their contribution. Every finished object becomes part of someone else's life. The farmer depends upon the blacksmith's tools. The blacksmith drinks from the potter's jars. The potter wears clothing woven by the weaver. The weaver eats bread grown by the farmer. No one truly stands alone. Each person supports another, creating a community held together not by grand speeches or written promises, but by everyday acts of honest work. Standing quietly in the center of the village, you begin to understand something historians often overlook. Empires are remembered for their kings. But they endure because of ordinary people. Because someone shaped the bricks. Someone wove the cloth. Someone sharpened the plow. Someone baked the bread. Without these quiet craftsmen, even the greatest palace would soon fall silent. The heat of the day continues to build, and many workshops begin closing their doors against the strongest afternoon sun. The village grows calmer once more. The steady sounds of work soften into a peaceful hush. You take one last look at the potter's freshly shaped jars, resting patiently in the shade as they wait to dry. Like so much else in ancient Persia, they are in no hurry. Time, after all, is one resource this remarkable civilization has learned to respect. And as you leave the workshops behind, your thoughts begin to wander beyond the village itself. For somewhere beyond these quiet streets lies a network of roads stretching farther than the eye can see, roads that connect distant cities, bustling markets, and the heart of one of history's greatest empires. The Royal Road. As the gentle sounds of the village begin to fade behind you, a different kind of journey quietly unfolds. Until now, your day in ancient Persia has been spent among ordinary people, farmers tending their fields, potters shaping clay, weavers patiently guiding thread through wooden looms, and craftsmen whose skilled hands keep the village alive. Their world is familiar in its simplicity, even if every task demands far more effort than you are accustomed to. But the Persian Empire is far larger than this peaceful settlement. Much larger. In fact, if you could somehow rise high above the valley and look across the lands ruled by the great king, you would see an empire stretching farther than almost anyone of this age could travel in a lifetime. Snow-covered mountains stand in the north. Great rivers flow through fertile plains. Vast deserts shimmer beneath the midday sun. Forests blanket distant hills. Beyond them lie coastlines where ships sail across blue waters toward lands that seem almost endless. Somehow, all of these places are connected. Not by magic. Not by chance. But by roads. You leave the village alongside a small group of travelers who have gathered just beyond its edge. There is no grand farewell. The villagers simply nod politely before returning to their work. Travel is a normal part of life here. Merchants come and go. Messengers arrive with news. Families visit neighboring settlements. The world feels large, yet never entirely isolated. The dusty path beneath your sandals soon widens. Small footpaths merge together until they become something much more impressive. The road before you is broad enough for carts, riders, and long caravans to pass one another with surprising ease. Its surface is carefully maintained. Loose stones have been cleared away. Low ditches guide rainwater from the roadway during the wetter seasons. Although it may not resemble the smooth highways of the modern world, it is remarkably well planned. This is one small part of the great network of roads that binds the Persian Empire together. Perhaps the most famous of them all is known today as the Royal Road. Built and improved during the reign of the Achaemenid kings, this extraordinary route stretches for well over 2,000 kilometers, linking important cities across the empire. To the people living here, it is far more than a road. It is a lifeline. As you begin walking, you quickly discover something that modern travelers often forget. Distance feels very different when nearly every journey is made on foot. There are no engines to carry you effortlessly across the countryside. No trains. No buses. No airplane soaring overhead. Every mile must be earned. Each step presses gently into the dusty earth before another follows. At first, the walk feels pleasant. A light breeze softens the warmth of the day, carrying with it the scent of wild herbs growing beside the road. Small butterflies drift lazily between patches of flowering shrubs, while birds perch upon low branches, seemingly unconcerned by the passing travelers. The countryside unfolds at a peaceful pace, perhaps slower than you expected. Yet there is something strangely comforting about moving through the landscape one careful step at a time. You notice details that would otherwise pass unnoticed. The rough texture of weathered stones. The quiet buzzing of bees among tiny blossoms. The gentle rustling of leaves high above your head. Travel itself becomes an opportunity to observe. Not to hurry. After an hour or so, you hear the soft jingling of small bells somewhere ahead. The sound grows steadily louder until a caravan slowly comes into view. Several camels walk in a long, patient line, each carrying heavy bundles secured with thick ropes. Their broad feet move confidently across the dusty road, raising only small clouds of fine earth behind them. Donkeys follow close behind, transporting baskets filled with goods carefully wrapped in woven cloth. A few sturdy horses accompany the caravan as well, ridden by experienced travelers who quietly watch the road ahead. The caravan moves neither quickly nor slowly. Its pace is steady. Everyone adjusts to the rhythm of the animals. There is no point rushing creatures that may still have many days of travel ahead. As the caravan draws closer, you begin wondering what treasures those bundles might contain. Perhaps fine linen from Egypt. Perhaps spices carried from distant eastern lands. Perhaps carefully woven carpets, polished ivory, fragrant cedar wood, or precious metals destined for workshops hundreds of miles away. The Persian Empire sits at the meeting point of many civilizations. Goods arrive from astonishing distances. Ideas travel with them. Languages mingle. Stories spread from one generation of travelers to another. Every caravan carries more than merchandise. It carries knowledge. The leader of the caravan raises a hand in greeting as your small group steps politely aside to allow the animals to pass. There is no impatience. No angry shouting. Everyone understands the simple courtesy of sharing the road. When the last camel disappears around a gentle bend, silence slowly returns once again. Only the soft crunch of footsteps remains. You continue walking until a sturdy stone building appears beside the road. Its walls are thick. Its courtyard shaded. Several travelers rest beneath a simple wooden shelter while their animals drink from long stone troughs filled with cool water. This is one of the many stopping places that make long-distance travel possible. Here, weary travelers can pause, refill their water containers, care for their animals, and exchange news gathered from distant provinces. Although these stations vary in size and comfort, they provide something every traveler values: a chance to rest. You find a quiet place beneath the welcome shade of a tree. The coolness is immediately noticeable. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves overhead, creating dancing patterns of sunlight across the ground. Nearby, two merchants quietly compare small pieces of dyed fabric, discussing colors and weaving techniques from regions hundreds of miles apart. Another traveler carefully repairs a leather sandal using little more than a needle and strong thread. A young boy refills clay water jars for arriving guests. Even here, far from the village, the quiet rhythm of ordinary work continues. You begin to appreciate how thoughtfully this vast empire has been organized. The roads are not merely paths through the countryside. They are carefully maintained connections between communities. They allow farmers to sell surplus grain. They allow craftsmen to purchase raw materials. They allow officials to govern distant provinces. They allow families separated by many days' travel to remain connected. Most importantly, they remind every traveler that they are part of something much larger than themselves. You stretch your legs for a moment before continuing your journey. The afternoon sun now shines brightly overhead, though the dry air keeps the heat surprisingly bearable beneath your loose clothing. Far ahead, the road disappears into the shimmering distance, winding towards cities you have yet to discover. Somewhere beyond the horizon lies Persepolis. Beyond that, Susa. Beyond those, countless other settlements, each with its own people, customs, and stories. The road promises all of them. But reaching them requires patience. Step after careful step. Just as it has for travelers across the Persian Empire for generations. As you resume your quiet walk, you realize that surviving ancient Persia is not simply about enduring hard work or adapting to unfamiliar customs. It is also about accepting a slower pace of life. Journeys are measured in days rather than hours. Messages travel with riders instead of invisible signals. The world feels larger because every destination must be reached through time, effort, and perseverance. And as the royal road stretches endlessly before you beneath the warm afternoon sun, another adventure quietly waits just around the next bend. For every road eventually leads to a marketplace, where merchants from across the known world gather to exchange not only goods, but also stories, laughter, and the endless curiosity that has always accompanied those willing to travel. Markets and the meeting of the world. The road continues beneath your feet, unrolling gently across the landscape like a ribbon laid carefully over the hills. For some time, there is little to disturb the quiet rhythm of your journey. The occasional caravan passes in one direction. A lone rider disappears toward the horizon in the other. The wind brushes softly through patches of tall grass beside the road, carrying with it the warm scent of sun-dried earth and distant orchards. It is easy to lose yourself in the steady pace of walking. One step, then another. The world seems to slow until the only measure of time is the movement of your own shadow across the ground. Eventually, however, the silence begins to change. At first, it is almost impossible to notice. A faint murmur drifts through the air. Then another. Soon, the gentle breeze carries unfamiliar sounds toward you. The soft call of merchants greeting arriving travelers. The patient grumbling of camels waiting beneath their heavy loads. The laughter of children weaving between baskets and wagons. Somewhere nearby, a craftsman taps lightly upon a piece of bronze, testing its smooth surface before placing it carefully upon a table. The sounds grow clearer with every step. Without anyone announcing it, you know you are approaching a marketplace. As the road bends gently around a cluster of tall poplar trees, the market slowly comes into view. It is not a towering city square filled with grand buildings. Instead, it is an open gathering place where people from many different villages, towns, and distant provinces have come together for another ordinary trading day. Simple awnings stretched across wooden poles provide welcome shade from the afternoon sun. Colorful woven rugs cover patches of packed earth where merchants display their goods. Donkeys stand patiently beside carts piled high with sacks of grain. Camels kneel quietly while their handlers loosen heavy bundles tied securely across their backs. The entire market feels alive. Yet it never feels rushed. There is movement everywhere, but very little chaos. People walk at an unhurried pace. They stop to admire finely woven cloth. They exchange greetings before discussing prices. They smile politely before continuing on their way. Business here is built as much upon trust as upon silver. You wander slowly between the rows of merchants, careful not to interrupt anyone's work. Each stall offers something different. One displays polished copper bowls that gleam warmly beneath the sunlight. Another is filled with baskets overflowing with walnuts, almonds, dried figs, and dates. Nearby, bundles of fragrant herbs hang neatly from wooden beams, filling the air with the fresh scents of mint, thyme, and coriander. The aromas mingle together in the warm afternoon breeze. Freshly baked bread, sweet fruit, dry spices, leather, wood, smoke rising gently from a nearby cooking fire. Every breath seems to carry a new fragrance. A merchant notices your quiet curiosity and gestures towards several neatly folded textiles. Their colors are rich but natural deep reds, soft blues, earthy browns, and gentle shades of cream. He carefully unfolds one corner, revealing an intricate woven pattern that must have taken countless hours to complete. You run your fingers lightly across the cloth. It feels surprisingly smooth. Every thread has been placed with extraordinary care. In the modern world, fabric often arrives folded inside brightly lit shops, one roll nearly identical to another. Here, every piece is unique. Every pattern reflects the hands that created it. Every purchase supports an artisan whose family may have practiced the same craft for generations. You continue your gentle walk through the market. At another stall, a silversmith quietly polishes bracelets and small decorative pins. The pieces are elegant without being extravagant. Many will become treasured family possessions rather than passing fashions. Nearby, a basket maker sits cross-legged beneath the shade of a tree, patiently weaving fresh reeds into sturdy containers. His fingers move almost without thought. Over. Under. Around. Again. The rhythm is slow enough to feel almost musical. Watching him, you realize something you have noticed throughout your journey in ancient Persia. Very few people appear idle. Yet very few seem hurried either. There is always something useful to do. A tool to repair. A basket to finish. A customer to greet. A loaf of bread to bake. Life here is filled with work, but it is work carried out with quiet purpose rather than constant urgency. As you wander farther, your attention is drawn toward a group of travelers gathered beneath a large awning. Their clothing is unlike that of the nearby villagers. One man wears a long robe embroidered with patterns unfamiliar to your eye. Another speaks a language you cannot understand, his words flowing with different sounds and rhythms. A third carefully unloads small bundles tied with fine cord, revealing spices whose fragrances are unlike anything growing in this region. The Persian Empire stretches across lands inhabited by many different peoples. Persians, Babylonians, Egyptians, Lydians, Phoenicians, Medes, and countless others. Each brings their own customs, foods, skills, and traditions. The marketplace becomes more than a place of trade. It becomes a meeting place for cultures. Ideas travel here just as surely as goods. One merchant demonstrates a new style of pottery. Another describes farming techniques used in distant valleys. Stories of unfamiliar cities pass from traveler to traveler, changing slightly each time they are retold. Long before books become common, knowledge itself travels by conversation. You pause beside a spice merchant whose small wooden boxes contain carefully measured portions of cinnamon, cumin, saffron, and other precious seasonings. The scents are warm and inviting. A tiny pinch is enough to perfume an entire meal. Because these spices have traveled such great distances, they are treated with remarkable care. Not a single grain is spilled carelessly. The merchant gently closes each lid after showing it to a customer, protecting both the fragrance and the value within. Nothing is taken for granted. Not even a single spice. Nearby, a father kneels beside his young daughter, showing her how to examine a clay bowl before buying it. He turns it slowly in the sunlight, checking for tiny cracks or uneven edges. She watches closely, patiently. One day, she too will know how to judge the quality of such everyday objects. Education here often begins not inside formal classrooms, but through observation. Children learn by accompanying their parents, by listening, by helping, by repeating simple tasks until they become familiar. The marketplace itself becomes a classroom without walls. As the afternoon sun continues its slow journey across the sky, the light softens slightly. Longer shadows begin stretching beneath the market stalls. A gentle breeze returns, bringing welcome relief after the warmest hours of the day. Several merchants pour cool water from clay jars into small cups, offering drinks to weary travelers. Others sit together beneath shaded awnings, sharing bread, cheese, olives, and quiet conversation before returning to their customers. Hospitality remains as valuable as commerce. You find a peaceful place beneath a broad tree overlooking much of the market. From here, you can simply observe. A caravan arriving from the east. A shepherd purchasing a new leather strap. A potter carefully wrapping a freshly sold water jar in soft cloth before placing it inside a customer's basket. No one celebrates loudly after making a sale. No one appears disappointed when business is slow. There is a calm confidence that tomorrow will bring another opportunity. Another traveler. Another conversation. Another ordinary day. Perhaps that is one of the greatest surprises of ancient Persia. Its greatness is rarely loud. It reveals itself quietly. In well-maintained roads. In honest craftsmanship. In fair trade. In shared meals. In neighbors greeting one another with respect. These ordinary moments form the true foundation of the empire. The magnificent palaces may capture the attention of history. But it is places like this marketplace that keep the empire alive. As the afternoon gradually begins to mellow, merchants start arranging their goods more carefully, preparing for the journey home before darkness falls. Camels are loaded once again. Bundles are secured. Children help gather empty baskets. The market slowly begins to dissolve, not with haste, but with the same peaceful rhythm in which it appeared. You rise from the shade and take one final look across the gathering. Only a few hours ago, this place was filled with strangers. Now it feels strangely familiar. You have seen goods from distant lands. Heard languages carried across mountains and deserts. Watch people who may never meet again exchange both merchandise and kindness. It is a quiet reminder that the Persian Empire is held together not only by roads and rulers, but by countless ordinary people who choose cooperation over conflict, patience over haste, and honest work over empty display. With the marketplace slowly disappearing behind you, your journey turns toward an even greater wonder. For somewhere beyond these villages, fields, and trading stalls rises the ceremonial heart of the empire itself, a place where towering stone columns, magnificent stairways, and royal audiences reveal the extraordinary vision of the great kings. Living under the great king. As the sounds of the marketplace gradually fade into the distance, the road before you grows quiet once again. The lively conversations of merchants become little more than faint echoes carried away by the afternoon breeze. The scent of spices and freshly baked bread slowly disappears, replaced by the familiar fragrance of warm earth, wild grasses, and the occasional grove of cypress trees swaying gently beneath the Persian sky. You walk at an easy pace. There is no reason to hurry. In ancient Persia, nearly every journey rewards those who are willing to look carefully at the world around them. The empire is vast, but it is also remarkably orderly. At first, that order is difficult to see. To a traveler, the countryside appears peaceful and uncomplicated. Villages rise beside fertile valleys. Farmers tend their crops. Shepherds guide their flocks across gentle hills. Caravans follow familiar roads from one settlement to another. Everything seems to happen naturally. But beneath this quiet daily life lies an extraordinary system of organization. An empire this immense could never survive through chance alone. Somehow, millions of people living across mountains, deserts, forests, and rivers are connected beneath the rule of a single king. It is an astonishing thought. The man known throughout the empire as the Great King rules lands stretching farther than most people could ever imagine. Yet it is equally astonishing that many ordinary villagers will never see him. Some may spend their entire lives working the same fields, raising families, repairing homes, and harvesting grain without ever standing inside a royal palace. Even so, the king's presence is quietly felt everywhere. Not through constant displays of power, but through order. You pass a stone marker standing beside the road. Its purpose is simple. It helps travelers understand where they are and guides officials responsible for maintaining the route. Nearby, workers carefully clear loose rocks that have fallen after recent winds. No one applauds their efforts. Few travelers will remember their faces. Yet without such quiet maintenance, the roads would slowly disappear beneath nature. The empire depends upon people whose names history rarely records. As the afternoon continues, you arrive at a modest administrative village. It is larger than the farming settlement you visited earlier, though still peaceful. Several buildings stand together around a broad courtyard shaded by tall trees. Unlike homes or workshops, these structures are used for keeping records, collecting supplies, and helping manage the surrounding countryside. A few officials sit quietly beneath a covered porch. Before them rest smooth wooden tables holding clay tablets, sheets of carefully prepared parchment, and writing tools. One man presses tiny wedge-shaped marks into damp clay with remarkable precision. Another carefully rolls a carved cylinder seal across the surface of a document, leaving behind an intricate pattern that identifies its owner. There are no noisy arguments. No piles of scattered papers. Everything appears calm. Deliberate. Orderly. You watch with quiet fascination. In your own time, governments often seem hidden behind computer screens and distant offices. Here, administration is something you can see. Every harvest is recorded. Every delivery carefully counted. Every message written by hand. Mistakes cannot simply be corrected with the press of a key. Accuracy matters. A farmer approaches carrying several sacks of grain loaded onto a small cart. He greets the officials respectfully before the contents are weighed and recorded. Some of the grain will remain within the local community. Some may help supply workers maintaining roads. Some will eventually support soldiers, craftsmen, or laborers serving elsewhere in the empire. Taxes in ancient Persia are not always paid with coins. Often they are paid with the products of one's labor. Grain, livestock, wine, oil, textiles. Each province contributes according to its resources. Rather than feeling oppressive in this quiet village, the process appears almost routine. People know what is expected. The officials know their responsibilities. Life continues with surprisingly little drama. Nearby, a young apprentice carefully watches an older scribe at work. The older man pauses from time to time, pointing toward individual symbols pressed into the clay. The boy nods patiently before attempting to copy them himself. Writing is a valuable skill. Not everyone can do it. Those who learn become trusted members of society, preserving agreements, recording harvests, and ensuring that information travels accurately across the empire. You cannot help imagining how long it must take to master such careful work. Each symbol requires practice. Each document demands concentration. There are no shortcuts. Even knowledge grows slowly here. The courtyard itself remains wonderfully peaceful. A small fountain fed by cool water from an underground channel murmurs softly nearby. Pigeons wander across the stone pavement searching for scattered seeds. An elderly gardener quietly trims flowering shrubs growing along the edge of the building. The scene feels less like the center of government and more like a place devoted to patience. Perhaps that is exactly the point. Good administration is often invisible. When it functions well, ordinary life simply continues. You resume your walk along the road, thinking about how different this world feels from the one you left behind. The Persian Empire governs an enormous territory filled with many different peoples. Each region speaks its own languages, practices its own customs, worships according to its own traditions. Yet somehow they remain connected beneath a shared system of roads, officials, laws, and mutual responsibilities. This balance requires remarkable wisdom. The great king cannot personally oversee every village. Instead, trusted governors known as satraps manage different provinces throughout the empire. They supervise local affairs, collect tribute, maintain security, and report important matters back to the royal court. It is a practical solution for ruling such a vast land. Even then, no system is perfect. Messages still require days or weeks to travel. Unexpected storms can delay caravans. Harvests sometimes fail despite careful planning. Life remains wonderfully human. No amount of organization can completely remove uncertainty. Perhaps that is why the people of Persia place such value upon preparation. They repair roads before they crumble. Store grain before winter arrives. Maintain irrigation channels long before drought threatens. Their wisdom lies not in predicting every difficulty, but in quietly preparing for those that may come. The afternoon sun now begins its slow descent toward the western hills. Its light grows softer, painting the surrounding countryside in warm shades of amber and gold. Long shadows stretch across the road. Travelers become fewer as many prepare to reach their evening destinations before darkness settles over the land. You pause upon a gentle hillside overlooking fields, orchards, and distant villages scattered across the valley below. Somewhere far beyond the horizon, the great king resides in magnificent palaces surrounded by towering columns and beautifully carved stone. Yet standing here, you realize something important. His empire is not built solely upon royal ceremonies or impressive architecture. It is built upon ordinary moments. A farmer delivering grain. A scribe recording careful notes. A road worker clearing fallen stones. A messenger carrying news. A gardener tending trees. Each small task strengthens the whole. Perhaps that is the quiet lesson of ancient Persia. Great civilizations are rarely sustained by extraordinary acts alone. More often, they endure because countless ordinary people faithfully complete ordinary responsibilities, day after day, generation after generation. As the afternoon breeze stirs the branches overhead, you continue your peaceful journey toward the ceremonial heart of the empire. Soon, the road will lead you to a place unlike anything you have yet seen. A city of magnificent stairways, soaring columns, and carefully carved stone reliefs. A place built not for everyday life, but for honoring the greatness of the empire itself. The road to Persepolis now lies just ahead. The quiet majesty of Persepolis. The road rises gently before you. With each steady step, the landscape begins to change almost without you noticing. The scattered farms and quiet villages gradually give way to broader avenues, carefully tended gardens, and clusters of buildings that seem more permanent than the simple mud brick homes you have visited throughout the day. The air remains warm, though the afternoon sun has begun its slow journey toward the western horizon. Its golden light softens everything it touches, bathing the hills in shades of amber and honey. Ahead, resting upon a broad stone terrace, stands one of the most remarkable places in the ancient world. Persepolis. Even from a distance, it is impressive. Not because it towers over the landscape like a fortress. Instead, it seems to grow naturally from the hillside itself, as though the mountain had quietly offered a place for craftsmen to create something extraordinary. You pause for a moment. After spending the day among farmers, artisans, merchants, and travelers, arriving here feels almost dreamlike. Yet despite its beauty, Persepolis is not a city in the way many people imagine. It is not crowded with busy neighborhoods or endless rows of houses. Rather, it is a ceremonial center, a place where representatives from across the empire gather during important occasions, where royal audiences are held, and where the greatness of Persia is expressed not through noise, but through careful design. A wide staircase welcomes visitors to the Great Terrace. Its steps immediately catch your attention. They are unusually broad and surprisingly shallow. At first, this seems curious. Why build such gentle steps? Then the answer quietly reveals itself. These staircases were designed so that people wearing long robes could climb them comfortably and gracefully. Even horses could be led up some of these gentle inclines without difficulty. Nothing here has been built by accident. Every detail reflects thoughtful planning. As you begin your slow ascent, your footsteps echo softly against the smooth limestone beneath your sandals. The stone has been worn smooth by countless visitors over many years. Delegations from distant provinces once climbed these same steps. Messengers, officials, craftsmen, noble families, representatives carrying gifts from lands stretching from Egypt to India. The staircase itself becomes part of their journey. You reach the top and pause once more. The view is breathtaking. Far below, the surrounding plain stretches toward distant mountains, where the afternoon light paints long shadows across the valleys. Fields shimmer gently in the breeze. Roads wind across the countryside like narrow ribbons. Tiny villages appear almost hidden among groves of trees. From here, the empire feels peaceful, endless, connected. Turning your attention back toward the terrace, you notice something remarkable carved into the stone walls lining the stairway. Rows of figures. Hundreds of them. Each carved with extraordinary care. At first glance, they seem almost identical. Yet the longer you look, the more differences begin to appear. Some wear long flowing robes. Others wear shorter tunics. Some carry finely crafted bowls. Others lead beautifully decorated horses. Still others present woven textiles, precious vessels, or carefully wrapped gifts. These carvings tell a quiet story. They represent the many peoples who lived within the Persian Empire. Rather than showing scenes of battle or conquest, the reliefs often depict peaceful processions. Delegations arriving respectfully, bringing offerings from their own homelands. Each group wears its own traditional clothing. Each retains its own identity. The empire is shown not simply as a place of power, but as a gathering of many cultures. You move closer, allowing your fingertips to hover just above the ancient stone. The carvings are astonishingly detailed. Individual curls of hair, tiny folds in fabric, the feathers of birds, the muscles of horses. Everything has been shaped with patient hands using little more than chisels, hammers, and remarkable skill. It is almost impossible to imagine how many years such work required. Generations of craftsmen likely devoted their lives to creating these magnificent walls. Their names have mostly been forgotten. Their work remains. A gentle breeze drifts across the terrace. Tall columns rise above you, reaching gracefully toward the blue Persian sky. Many still stand proudly, while others exist only as carefully scattered fragments resting where time has placed them. Even in silence, they possess extraordinary dignity. Each column seems to remind visitors that greatness need not shout. It can simply stand. Nearby, a pair of stone capitals shaped like powerful bulls rest atop several columns. These magnificent sculptures are both beautiful and practical, helping support the great wooden beams that once formed the roofs of palace halls. The builders of Persepolis understood that beauty and usefulness could exist together. Nothing feels excessive. Everything serves a purpose. You continue walking through the spacious courtyards. Unlike the busy marketplace you visited earlier, there is very little noise here. Only the wind. The occasional flutter of birds crossing the open sky. And your own footsteps echoing gently across the stone. The peaceful atmosphere invites reflection. It is easy to imagine official ceremonies taking place here. Delegations arriving in colorful robes. Royal guards standing quietly at their posts. Musicians filling the air with soft melodies during great festivals. Yet even at the height of such occasions, there was likely an orderliness that reflected the values of the empire itself. Discipline. Respect. Patience. As you enter one of the great audience halls, you pause beneath the towering columns. Though the roof no longer shelters the space as it once did, the scale remains astonishing. Sunlight pours gently through the open sky above, illuminating the polished stone floor. You close your eyes for just a moment. Perhaps you can almost hear the quiet murmur of ancient conversations. The careful footsteps of officials. The rustle of long robes. The distant sounds of horses waiting patiently beyond the gates. History often remembers kings seated upon magnificent thrones. But standing here, your thoughts return instead to the countless ordinary people whose labor made such places possible. The quarry workers who cut enormous blocks of stone from distant mountains. The builders who transported them across difficult terrain. The masons who fitted each piece with astonishing precision. The carpenters who shaped massive cedar beams. The sculptors who spent years carving scenes into hard limestone. The cooks who prepared meals for hundreds of workers. The water carriers who kept everyone supplied beneath the hot Persian sun. Even the grandest palace rests upon ordinary effort. This realization has quietly followed you throughout your journey. Whether in a village bakery, an artisan's workshop, a bustling marketplace, or now within the ceremonial heart of the empire, the same truth appears again and again. History is built by many hands. Not only by those whose names fill history books. As the afternoon slowly begins to soften into early evening, the golden sunlight transforms the pale limestone into warm shades of amber and rose. Long shadows stretch gracefully across the terrace. The entire complex seems almost to glow. It is easy to understand why visitors from distant lands would have carried memories of Persepolis with them long after returning home. Not because it was the largest place they had ever seen, nor because it was the loudest, but because it expressed confidence through harmony. Power through order. Beauty through patience. You find a quiet place overlooking the surrounding plain and allow yourself a few peaceful moments of stillness. Far below, caravans continue moving along dusty roads. Farmers finish the last tasks of the day. Smoke begins rising gently from village hearths as evening meals are prepared. Life continues beyond the palace walls. It always has. It always will. The great king may preside over ceremonies within these magnificent halls, but the empire itself lives in its fields, villages, workshops, roads, and marketplaces. That thought brings a quiet sense of balance. The palace honors the empire. The people sustain it. As the sun drifts lower toward the horizon, painting the distant mountains in soft shades of violet and gold, you realize that your day in ancient Persia is slowly approaching its most peaceful hours. Soon, the warmth of the afternoon will give way to the cool air of evening. Homes will fill with the comforting aroma of simple suppers. Families will gather together. Oil lamps will begin to flicker against mud brick walls. And with the coming of night, another gentle chapter of life in ancient Persia will quietly unfold. Sacred fire and the quiet rhythm of faith. As the last golden light lingers over the stone terraces of Persepolis, you begin your journey away from the ceremonial heart of the empire. The towering columns slowly disappear behind you, their long shadows stretching across the hillside as though reluctant to let the day come to an end. The limestone glows warmly beneath the setting sun, while the distant mountains fade into soft shades of violet and blue. The road home feels quieter now. Perhaps it is because the busiest hours of the day have already passed. Perhaps it is because you have begun to understand the gentle rhythm of life in ancient Persia. The morning belonged to work. The afternoon belonged to travel, trade, and duty. Now, as evening approaches, another part of daily life quietly reveals itself. The time for reflection. The air grows noticeably cooler with every step. A pleasant breeze drifts across the countryside, carrying the scent of cypress trees, wild herbs, and freshly watered fields. Birds that filled the morning sky with cheerful songs now begin searching for safe branches where they will spend the night. The entire landscape seems to slow its breathing. Even the animals sense the day's work drawing to a close. You notice a shepherd leading his flock back toward the village. The sheep move calmly, their soft wool glowing pale beneath the evening light. Several children walk beside them, carrying small wooden staffs much too large for their young hands. They speak quietly among themselves, occasionally laughing before falling silent once again. There is no urgency. Everyone understands that they will reach home before darkness settles completely. As you continue along the gently winding road, you see something unusual upon a nearby hill. At first, it appears to be nothing more than a modest stone building standing alone against the fading sky. There are no towering walls. No grand statues. No richly decorated entrance. Its beauty lies in its simplicity. A thin column of pale smoke rises peacefully into the still evening air. The closer you come, the more carefully people begin lowering their voices. Several travelers pause briefly before continuing on their journey. Others bow their heads respectfully. No one seems afraid. Instead, the atmosphere feels calm. Almost comforting. You have arrived near a sacred place. Although the Persian Empire was home to many peoples with many different traditions, one of the most influential beliefs during the Achaemenid period was the faith we now know as Zoroastrianism. It is among the world's oldest continuously practiced religions. Its teachings encourage people to choose truth over falsehood, kindness over cruelty, and order over chaos. Rather than focusing only on elaborate ceremonies, much of its wisdom is expressed through the simple choices people make every day. To speak honestly. To work faithfully. To care for both family and community. These quiet values feel surprisingly familiar. You remain respectfully outside the modest sanctuary. There is no need to intrude. From where you stand, you can see a gentle glow flickering within. A sacred fire burns steadily inside. Its light dances softly against the stone walls, creating warm patterns that seem almost alive. Fire holds a special place within this tradition. Not because it is worshipped as a god, but because it represents purity, wisdom, and the light of truth. Its steady flame reminds people to live with honesty and integrity. Watching it from a distance, you understand why such a symbol would offer comfort. Unlike the setting sun, the flame continues shining even as evening grows darker. Nearby, an elderly caretaker quietly adds another piece of carefully dried wood to the fire. His movements are slow and deliberate. Nothing is rushed. The flame brightens for a moment before returning to its calm, steady glow. He has likely performed this same simple duty thousands of times. Each evening, each season, year after year. There is something deeply peaceful about repetition when it is filled with purpose. The wind stirs gently through the surrounding trees. Their branches whisper softly overhead, blending with the distant sounds of evening birds returning to their nests. You sit upon a smooth stone overlooking the hillside. From here, you can see much of the valley below. Small villages are beginning to prepare their evening meals. Thin trails of smoke rise lazily from clay ovens. Farmers lead tired oxen back toward wooden shelters. Goats gather inside simple enclosures built from stone and timber. The day is ending exactly as it began. Not with excitement, but with quiet routine. As you watch the fading light, you begin thinking about what faith might have meant to an ordinary Persian villager. For most people, religion was not something reserved only for special festivals or magnificent ceremonies. It was woven gently into everyday life. A farmer offering thanks for a successful harvest. Parents teaching children the importance of keeping promises. Neighbors helping one another repair a damaged roof after a storm. Merchants conducting business honestly. Craftsmen taking pride in careful work. Faith appeared not only in words, but in actions. The lessons were practical. Live truthfully. Respect others. Protect what is good. Leave the world a little better than you found it. These simple ideas quietly echoed throughout the empire. As darkness slowly approaches, several travelers pause beside a small spring flowing from the hillside. Each washes their hands before continuing. The cool water catches the last rays of sunlight, sparkling briefly before disappearing into the gathering shadows. Water, like fire, is treated with deep respect. It gives life to fields. It refreshes weary travelers. It asks only that people use it wisely. Throughout your journey today, you have seen this respect again and again. Not a drop wasted. Not a loaf of bread carelessly discarded. Not a useful tool neglected. The values of the people seem reflected in the way they care for the world around them. Perhaps that is no coincidence. The evening grows cooler now. A crescent moon begins to appear above the eastern hills, pale against the deepening blue sky. One by one, the first stars quietly reveal themselves. They shine with the same quiet certainty they did more than 2,000 years ago. You imagine ancient travelers looking upward at these very same constellations after long days upon the royal road. Farmers resting after harvest. Merchants returning from distant markets. Children listening to stories beneath the open sky. The stars belong to all of them equally, just as they belong to you now. The sacred fire continues burning gently behind you. Its warm glow remains steady against the growing darkness. It asks for nothing. It simply shines. Perhaps that is why it has endured as such a powerful symbol for so many centuries. Not because it demands attention, but because it quietly reminds anyone willing to pause that light, truth, and kindness often reveal themselves most clearly during life's quietest moments. As you rise and continue your journey toward the welcoming lights of the nearby village, you carry that peaceful thought with you. The evening is still young. Families are gathering. Simple meals are being prepared. Stories will soon be shared around softly glowing lamps. Festivals, family, and the joy of gathering. Leaving the quiet hillside behind, you follow the winding path back toward the village. The sacred fire gradually disappears from view, though its gentle glow seems to linger in your thoughts long after it has faded behind the trees. The evening air has become pleasantly cool now, a welcome change after the warmth of the afternoon. A soft breeze drifts across the fields, carrying with it the scent of fresh earth, flowering herbs, and wood smoke rising from distant homes. The day is beginning its final, peaceful chapter. Around you, the countryside seems to slow with remarkable grace. The shepherd you noticed earlier has returned safely with his flock. The sheep settle quietly inside their stone enclosure, while the goats eagerly search for fresh bundles of hay waiting nearby. Chickens hop onto low wooden perches, fluffing their feathers before tucking their heads beneath their wings. Even the birds overhead are becoming quieter. The lively songs of the morning have given way to gentle calls exchanged between companions searching for a comfortable place to rest. Nature itself seems ready for evening. As you approach the village, you notice something slightly different from the calm routine you have observed throughout the day. There is a feeling of quiet anticipation. Several families are sweeping their courtyards more carefully than usual. Children carry small baskets filled with fresh flowers gathered from nearby fields. Colorful woven rugs are being spread beneath shaded verandas. Clay lamps are placed neatly along low walls, waiting patiently for darkness to arrive. You soon realize that today is not simply another ordinary evening. The village is preparing for a celebration. Throughout the Persian Empire, communities marked the passing seasons with festivals that brought families, neighbors, and travelers together. Among the most cherished was Nowruz, the celebration of the new year, held at the arrival of spring. Although your journey does not take place on that exact day, the gathering before you reflects the same warm spirit that shaped many Persian celebrations. It is not a celebration of excess. It is a celebration of gratitude. The harvest, the changing seasons, friendship, family. Another year of life beneath the same familiar sky. People begin arriving from nearby homes carrying simple dishes prepared with great care. Fresh bread wrapped in linen cloth. Bowls of herbs. Soft cheeses made from goat's milk. Dates, figs, walnuts, and pomegranates arranged neatly upon wooden trays. Large clay pitchers filled with cool water stand in the shade, while smaller jugs of diluted wine are carefully placed beside them. Nothing appears extravagant. Yet everything has been prepared thoughtfully. Every guest is welcomed. No one is left standing alone for long. Hospitality is not considered a special kindness. It is simply the proper way to receive another person. An elderly woman notices you watching quietly from the edge of the gathering. With a gentle smile, she motions toward an empty place upon a woven rug. No elaborate invitation is needed. You are welcomed simply because you have arrived. You sit gratefully among the others. Around you, conversations begin flowing as naturally as the nearby stream. No one dominates the discussion. People speak one at a time, listening just as carefully as they talk. An old farmer shares memories of a particularly generous harvest many years ago. A young craftsman proudly describes the first water jar he completed without his master's assistance. Children whisper excitedly about a newborn lamb that arrived only a few days earlier. The stories are ordinary, and that is precisely what makes them beautiful. History often remembers the speeches of kings. Rarely does it preserve the quiet conversations shared among neighbors after sunset. Yet these moments form the heart of everyday life. Nearby, a young musician carefully lifts a small stringed instrument onto his lap. He gently plucks the first notes. The melody is soft, unhurried. It rises into the cool evening air before drifting gently across the courtyard. Soon another musician joins him with a simple reed flute. The two instruments seem to speak to one another, neither trying to outshine the other. Their music feels less like a performance and more like another peaceful conversation. Some of the younger children begin swaying gently to the rhythm. An older couple smiles as they watch them, remembering perhaps their own childhood celebrations many decades before. There is no grand stage, no dazzling display, only music shared among friends. The stars continue appearing overhead one by one. The sky deepens into rich shades of indigo. Oil lamps are lit throughout the courtyard, their small flames dancing gently whenever the evening breeze passes by. The warm glow softens every face. Shadows stretch quietly across the mud brick walls. The village feels wonderfully peaceful. As the meal continues, you notice something familiar. No one eats hurriedly. The food is passed from person to person with quiet generosity. Each guest takes only what is needed, leaving plenty for everyone else. A loaf of bread is broken into smaller pieces rather than sliced. A bowl of dates travels slowly around the circle. Fresh herbs are shared without ceremony. Simple acts of kindness become almost invisible because they are so common. You begin thinking once again about your own world. Meals are often rushed. Conversations interrupted. Attention divided between many different distractions. Here, there is only the meal itself, the people around you, the fading warmth of the day, the cool promise of evening. Perhaps comfort has always depended less upon luxury than upon companionship. As the gathering continues, one of the village elders begins telling a story. His voice is calm and steady, shaped by many years of speaking beneath open skies like this one. The children grow quiet almost immediately. Even the adults listen with gentle smiles. The tale speaks of courage, honesty, and wisdom. Not through dramatic battles or fearsome monsters, but through ordinary choices made by ordinary people. The lesson feels perfectly suited to everything you have witnessed during your journey. Greatness is not reserved for rulers alone. It is found in faithful work, in truthful words, in generous hearts. The story ends quietly. There is no applause. Only a peaceful silence before conversation gradually begins once more. Somewhere beyond the courtyard, a donkey lets out a sleepy bray. Several people laugh softly. Even the animals, it seems, have become part of the evening's gentle rhythm. The moon has climbed higher now, bathing the village in pale silver light. The heat of the afternoon feels like a distant memory. Children begin yawning despite their efforts to stay awake. Parents gather sleeping infants into their arms. The youngest guests are gently carried home beneath blankets woven by patient hands many seasons ago. The celebration slowly begins to dissolve. Not because anyone wishes it to end. Simply because tomorrow will arrive with another sunrise. Fields will still need tending. Bread will still need baking. Water channels will still require careful attention. Life continues. Always gently. Always steadily. You remain seated for a few quiet moments after most families have returned home. The courtyard has grown peaceful once again. Only a handful of lamps remain burning. Above you, the stars stretch across the heavens with astonishing clarity. Without the lights of modern cities, the night sky seems almost endless. The familiar constellations shine exactly as they did for those gathered here more than 2,000 years ago. Perhaps someone sitting beside this very courtyard once looked upward and wondered about the future. Perhaps they hoped their children would live peaceful lives. Perhaps they simply gave thanks for another ordinary day. Those hopes feel surprisingly familiar. As you finally rise to continue your evening walk through the quiet village, you realize that one of the greatest strengths of ancient Persia was not found only in magnificent palaces or carefully organized roads. It was found here. In shared meals. In quiet music. In stories told beneath the stars. In neighbors who welcomed one another without hesitation. These simple gatherings gave warmth to everyday life and reminded everyone that even within one of history's greatest empires, the greatest treasures were often the people sitting beside you. The night has now fully arrived. The village grows quieter with every passing moment. Soon, the only sounds remaining will be the gentle crackle of oil lamps, the whisper of the evening breeze, and the peaceful silence that settles over the Persian countryside before another day begins. Heat, dust, and the challenges of the Persian land. The village is quiet now. The celebration has ended. The final lamps have burned low, and the last conversations have faded into the peaceful darkness of the Persian night. You rest beneath a simple woven blanket, listening to the sounds that have replaced the voices of the day. A gentle breeze moves across the courtyard. A distant animal calls softly before becoming silent again. Somewhere beyond the village walls, water continues flowing through the ancient channels that have carried life across this land for generations. For a moment, everything feels perfectly calm. Yet as the stars slowly disappear and another morning approaches, you begin to understand something important about ancient Persia. The greatest challenge here is not only work. It is the land itself. Persia is beautiful. But beauty does not always mean ease. The same mountains, deserts, and wide open plains that create breathtaking landscapes also demand patience, preparation, and resilience from those who call them home. Long before the sun rises, the village begins waking again. Not because anyone wants to leave the comfort of sleep, but because everyone understands the importance of using the cooler hours wisely. You open your eyes as the first light touches the horizon. The air is still pleasantly cool. For a brief moment, the world feels gentle. You step outside and look across the valley. Mist rests lightly above some of the lower fields, while the highest mountain peaks already catch the first rays of sunlight. The scene is peaceful, almost untouched. But you know what is coming. The warmth, the dryness, the relentless brightness of the Persian sun. The people around you understand this rhythm better than anyone. A farmer wraps a cloth around his head before leaving for the fields. A shepherd checks his water container carefully before guiding his animals toward distant grazing land. A traveler preparing to continue along the royal road fills his leather water skin completely before beginning the day's journey. No one waits until they are thirsty. Preparation begins before difficulty arrives. This simple habit is one of the reasons communities survive. You watch a group of workers inspecting the irrigation channels before the day becomes too hot. At first, the task seems ordinary. A little cleaning, a little repairing, a little careful attention. But you now understand that these small actions protect the entire village. A blocked channel could mean dry fields. Dry fields could mean a poor harvest. A poor harvest could affect families for an entire season. In a modern world, problems can sometimes be solved quickly. Here, prevention is everything. Nature does not offer second chances easily. The sun rises higher. The shadows become shorter. The valley slowly transforms. The cool greens of morning begin appearing brighter, almost sharper beneath the intense light. The distant hills lose their soft colors and become shades of brown and gold. The air becomes noticeably drier. You feel the moisture leaving your skin. Your throat begins to notice the difference. You understand why water has always been treated with such respect. Every drop has a journey. Every sip represents effort. As you walk beyond the village once more, you begin to see how closely life is connected to geography. A river valley creates fertile farmland. A mountain spring creates a settlement. A dry plain creates challenges that must be overcome through careful planning. People do not simply choose where to live. They learn where life is possible. Across the Persian Empire, communities adapted to many different environments. Some lived among fertile fields beside great rivers. Others survived in dry regions where underground water systems became essential. Some built homes from thick mud brick walls that protected against extreme temperatures. Others relied on mountain resources, forests, and seasonal streams. There was no single Persian landscape. There were many, and each demanded its own wisdom. As you travel farther, the land becomes more open. The road stretches ahead across a wide plain. The horizon seems impossibly distant. This is where the true meaning of distance becomes clear. In the modern world, a dry landscape might simply be something viewed through a window during a journey. Here, it is something you must cross. Every mile requires effort. Every destination requires planning. A traveler cannot simply decide to walk until nightfall without considering water, shelter, and safety. The road itself teaches patience. You walk beside a small caravan heading toward another settlement. The merchants move carefully, checking their animals and supplies regularly. One traveler carries extra rope. Another carries tools for repairing damaged equipment. Someone else carries dried food for unexpected delays. At first, these preparations seem excessive. Then you remember. There are no nearby shops. No emergency services. No quick solutions if something goes wrong. Self-reliance is not a personal preference here. It is survival. The caravan leader points toward the distant horizon. Dark shapes are forming far away. At first, they appear like ordinary clouds. But as they grow larger, you notice something different. They move across the land rather than the sky. Dust. A wall of fine particles lifted by the wind. A sandstorm. Everyone becomes quiet. Not frightened. Prepared. The travelers adjust their clothing. The animals are guided closer together. Faces are partially covered with cloth to protect against the blowing dust. The group moves toward a sheltered area beside the road. Nobody panics. They have experienced such moments before. The storm arrives slowly. The wind strengthens. Tiny grains of sand and dust begin moving through the air, tapping softly against clothing and wooden equipment. The world becomes hazy. The landscape disappears. For a while, there is only the sound of wind. It is a powerful reminder that humans, no matter how advanced their societies become, remain connected to the natural world. The storm eventually passes. The wind weakens. The dust settles. Slowly, the familiar shapes of mountains and roads return. Everyone checks their supplies. Everyone checks the animals. Everyone continues. No dramatic speeches. No celebration. Simply another challenge overcome. You realize that this is the true nature of surviving ancient Persia. Not constant danger. not endless hardship, but a continuous conversation with the environment. The land provides. People adapt. The seasons change. Life continues. As the day moves forward, you begin noticing another important lesson. The people of Persia do not waste energy fighting every inconvenience. They accept many things as part of life. Heat is expected. Dust is expected. Long journeys are expected. Instead of complaining about these realities, they build their lives around them. Their clothing, homes, tools, and schedules all reflect an understanding gained over generations. They know when to work, when to rest, when to travel, when to wait. This knowledge is invisible, yet it is everywhere. As evening approaches, you return once again toward the village. The same fields that looked harsh beneath the midday sun now glow peacefully in the fading light. Farmers gather their tools. Animals return home. The irrigation channels continue their quiet flow. The land appears gentle once more. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of Persia. The same environment that challenges people also creates their strength. The mountains teach endurance. The deserts teach patience. The seasons teach preparation. The land itself becomes a teacher. And after spending a day beneath the Persian sun, you begin to understand why someone arriving from the modern world might struggle. Not because ancient Persia lacks beauty, but because beauty here requires participation. You cannot simply observe this world from a comfortable distance. You must walk its roads, carry its water, respect its seasons, understand its rhythms. Only then does the landscape truly reveal itself. As darkness approaches once again, another challenge quietly waits. Because even when the land is understood, the human body remains fragile. Illness, injuries, and simple everyday problems could become far more serious in a world without modern medicine. The fragile balance of health and survival. The evening settles gently over the Persian landscape. The harsh brightness of the day has disappeared, replaced by the soft glow of sunset spreading across the valley. The mountains in the distance turn shades of gold and purple, while the fields below slowly return to their peaceful appearance. From far away, the village looks almost unchanged. The same mud brick walls. The same narrow pathways. The same trees standing quietly beside homes. But after everything you have experienced, you now see the village differently. You understand that beneath this peaceful appearance exists a delicate balance. A balance between health and illness. Between survival and vulnerability. Between the ordinary moments of life and the unexpected challenges that can change everything. In your own time, many small problems are solved almost without thought. A fever can be treated. A wound can be cleaned with specialized medicines. A broken bone can be carefully repaired. Information about health is available almost instantly. But in ancient Persia, the human body exists in a very different world. A small injury is not always small. A simple infection can become dangerous. A difficult birth can become a moment of uncertainty. A long journey can test the limits of even the strongest traveler. This does not mean people were helpless. Far from it. Ancient Persian society contained remarkable knowledge about healing, plants, cleanliness, and the importance of maintaining balance. But their tools were limited compared to the medical resources of the modern world. And that difference changes everything. As you walk through the village, you notice a small gathering near one of the homes. A young boy has injured his foot while playing near the fields. Several adults surround him calmly. There is no panic. His mother comforts him while an older woman carefully examines the injury. She washes the area with clean water before applying a simple herbal preparation. The boy winces briefly, then relaxes when he realizes he is surrounded by people who care for him. The scene is ordinary, yet it reveals something important. Community itself is one of the greatest forms of medicine available here. When modern hospitals do not exist nearby, people depend upon knowledge passed through generations. Parents learn from grandparents. Healers learn from experienced teachers. Neighbors help one another. Survival is rarely an individual achievement. It is something created together. The older woman treating the boy likely knows many plants and traditional remedies. Across ancient Persia, people used herbs, oils, honey, and other natural materials for various purposes. Some treatments were based on careful observation accumulated over centuries. Others were mixed with beliefs and practices that modern medicine would view differently. But behind them was a genuine desire to understand the human body and reduce suffering. The search for healing is as old as humanity itself. You continue through the village and notice another important feature of Persian life: cleanliness. Water appears again and again. Not only for farming, not only for drinking, but also for personal care. Many Persian communities valued washing and maintaining physical cleanliness. Public bath traditions developed in various periods and regions, reflecting an understanding that cleanliness contributed to health, comfort, and social life. The simple act of washing carried meaning. It refreshed the body after a dusty day. It prepared people for important gatherings. It offered a moment of peace. You think about how many times water has appeared throughout your journey. The underground channels bringing water to villages. The jars crafted by potters. The springs beside the roads. The cups shared during celebrations. Water is not merely a resource. It is the foundation upon which everything else depends. As night approaches, you enter a quieter part of the village where a small healing room has been prepared inside a larger home. There are no shelves filled with countless medicines. No bright lights. No complex instruments. Instead, there are carefully stored jars containing dried plants, oils, and simple tools. A healer sits nearby, listening carefully to an elderly man's concerns. The healer does not immediately offer a solution. First, he asks questions. About sleep. About food. About daily habits. About discomfort. You notice something interesting. The focus is not only on treating illness after it appears. It is also on preventing problems before they become serious. Balance is important. Too much work. Too little rest. Poor food. Lack of cleanliness. All can weaken the body. This understanding appears throughout many ancient healing traditions. The body is not separate from daily life. It is connected to everything around it. As you listen quietly, you begin to realize that one of the hardest parts of surviving ancient Persia would not be the heat, the roads, or the difficult labor. It would be uncertainty. The knowledge that some things cannot simply be fixed. A traveler leaving home might not know when they would return. A farmer might fear losing a harvest to drought. A family might worry when a child became seriously ill. Life required a different kind of courage. Not the loud courage of warriors on battlefields, but the quiet courage of ordinary people continuing despite uncertainty. This courage appears everywhere. A mother preparing food while caring for a sick child. A farmer returning to the fields after losing part of a harvest. A merchant continuing along dangerous roads to support a family. A craftsman rebuilding a damaged workshop after a storm. People adapt because they must. And through adaptation, they discover strength. Later in the evening, you sit beside a small fire outside the village. The flames move gently in the cool air. Around you, families speak softly. Some repair tools for tomorrow. Some prepare clothing. Some simply enjoy a few moments of rest before sleep. You look around and think about the extraordinary changes humans have experienced across history. Today, people often measure progress through technology, machines, buildings, speed. But here, progress looks different. It looks like discovering which plants help heal wounds. It looks like designing irrigation systems that prevent drought. It looks like building communities where people care for one another. It looks like learning from every generation that came before. Ancient Persia was not a world without knowledge. It was a world where knowledge traveled slowly, carried by human memory, experience, and tradition. Every healer, every farmer, every artisan, every parent held a small piece of the wisdom needed to survive. As the fire burns lower, the stars above become brighter. The village becomes silent once more. You think back over the days you have spent here. The fields, the workshops, the roads, the markets, the palace, the sacred fire, the harsh sun, the endless patience required for daily life. Now you understand the deeper reason why you might not last a day in ancient Persia. It is not because people here lived without comfort. They created their own forms of comfort. It is not because life lacked beauty. It was filled with beauty. The challenge is that everything demanded your participation. You could not ignore the weather. You could not waste resources. You could not separate yourself from your community. Life required awareness. Every action mattered. Every decision had consequences. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of this ancient world. Survival was not about being the strongest person. It was about learning how to belong. To the land. To the community. To the rhythm of life itself. The fire slowly turns into glowing embers. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise over Persia. Another day of work. Another day of challenges. Another day of quiet victories. And beyond the village, beyond the familiar roads, there are still more mysteries waiting to be discovered. For ancient Persia was not only a land of farmers, merchants, and kings. It was also a land of warriors, defenders, and people who lived with the constant responsibility of protecting everything they had built. The warriors who protected Persia. The morning arrives quietly. A thin line of golden light appears beyond the mountains, slowly pushing away the darkness of night. The village awakens in the familiar way you have come to recognize. The first sounds are gentle. A wooden door opening. A fire being carefully brought back to life. The soft footsteps of someone carrying water. The distant call of a farmer preparing for another day in the fields. But today feels different. There is a new sound beneath the ordinary rhythm of life. A sound that does not belong to farmers or craftsmen. The steady movement of trained feet. The quiet clinking of metal. The careful preparation of people who have a very different responsibility. Today, you are leaving the world of fields and workshops behind. You are going to see another side of ancient Persia. The world of soldiers. For most people living within the empire, peace was the greatest gift. A farmer wanted only to grow enough grain. A merchant wanted safe roads. A craftsman wanted customers and materials. Families wanted healthy children and secure homes. But peace rarely happens by itself. Behind every peaceful village, every busy market, and every safe road stands the responsibility of protection. Ancient Persia understood this deeply. The empire was enormous. Its borders stretched across deserts, mountains, and distant lands where different peoples, languages, and traditions existed side by side. Maintaining such a vast territory required organization, discipline, and a powerful military. As you walk beyond the village, you notice a small military camp positioned near the road. It is not a chaotic place filled with shouting. Instead, it feels surprisingly orderly. Tents stand in neat rows. Equipment is arranged carefully. Animals are fed and checked. Soldiers move with quiet confidence, following routines repeated many times before. The first thing you notice is that these warriors are not simply fighters. They are trained professionals. Their lives depend upon preparation. A soldier cannot afford carelessness. A poorly maintained weapon. A neglected piece of armor. A lack of discipline. Any of these could mean disaster during conflict. A soldier approaches a wooden rack where shields and equipment are stored. He carefully examines each item before placing it back in position. Another practices movements with a spear, repeating the same motions again and again. At first, the repetition seems unnecessary. Then you remember everything you have learned during this journey. The potter repeating the same movements until clay becomes art. The weaver repeating patterns until cloth becomes beautiful. The farmer repeating seasonal tasks until the land provides a harvest. Mastery comes through patience. Soldiers are no different. Their craft is simply different. You watch as a group of young recruits train beneath the morning sun. They carry wooden practice weapons rather than real ones. Their instructor walks slowly among them, correcting their posture. A small adjustment here. A slightly different movement there. Nothing is rushed. The goal is not to create aggression. It is to create control. A disciplined warrior understands that strength without control can become dangerous. The Persian Empire became famous for many military traditions, but perhaps one of its most remembered forces was the group known as the Immortals. Their name alone creates an image of mystery. A legendary unit of elite soldiers who served as the personal guard of the Persian kings. Ancient Greek writers described them as a force of 10,000 warriors whose number was always kept complete. When one soldier fell, another replaced him. Whether every detail of those accounts is perfectly accurate or not, their reputation was powerful. They represented reliability, strength, royal protection, the idea that the king's guard would always stand ready. But beyond the famous stories, countless ordinary soldiers served throughout the empire. Men who guarded roads, protected cities, escorted officials, maintained order along distant borders. Their names are mostly forgotten. Yet their responsibilities shape daily life. You walk past a soldier repairing a leather strap on his shield. He looks no different from the craftsman you met earlier. His hands are skilled. His tools are simple. His work requires patience. The difference is only in purpose. The craftsman creates objects that help people live. The soldier protects the conditions that allow those lives to continue. Neither role exists without the other. Nearby, horses are being prepared for riders. The animals are treated with great care. Their coats are brushed. Their equipment checked. Water is offered before any journey begins. You remember the caravans you saw on the royal road. The same principle appears here. Preparation before movement. Respect for valuable resources. Understanding that survival depends upon cooperation between humans and animals. A mounted soldier's strength comes not only from his own skill but from the trust between rider and horse. As the morning continues, you speak with a soldier resting beside a shaded tent. He explains through gestures and simple words that he has traveled far from his homeland. Like many people within the empire, he serves in a world where different cultures exist together. The Persian army was not made from only one group of people. It included soldiers from many regions, different clothing, different languages, different traditions. Yet they shared a common duty. This reflects something important about the Persian Empire. Its strength came partly from its ability to organize diversity. Many different peoples contributed to the empire's success. Farmers grew food. Artisans created tools. Merchants moved goods. Soldiers protected the roads and borders. Each group played a role. You look around the camp and notice how similar it feels to the villages you visited. People are eating simple meals, repairing equipment, sharing stories, resting when possible. Even warriors have ordinary moments. They miss home. They worry about loved ones. They laugh with friends. They wait for letters and messages carried along the same roads that connect the entire empire. History often shows soldiers only during moments of conflict. But most of a soldier's life is not battle. It is preparation, waiting, training, maintaining equipment, following orders, living with uncertainty. In many ways, the hardest part of being a warrior is not fighting. It is being ready to fight when the moment comes. As the afternoon approaches, the soldiers begin another training exercise. The sound of shields moving together fills the air. Steps become synchronized. Commands are followed immediately. The group moves almost like a single organism. You understand why discipline was so valued. A large army cannot function through individual actions alone. It requires trust. Each person must believe the person beside them will hold their position. The same idea appears everywhere you have traveled. The farmer trusts the irrigation channel. The merchant trusts the road. The family trusts the community. The soldier trusts the person standing beside him. Ancient Persia was built upon countless forms of trust. As the sun begins lowering, you leave the military camp and look back one final time. The soldiers continue their training. The road continues beyond them. The fields remain peaceful in the distance. Life carries on. And you realize something important. The warriors of Persia were not separate from ordinary society. They were part of the same great system. They protected the roads that merchants traveled, the fields that farmers cultivated, the homes where families rested, the workshops where artisans created. Their lives carried a heavy responsibility. Because in ancient Persia, survival was not only about creating a great civilization. It was also about protecting one. But the story of Persia's warriors is not only about weapons and discipline. It is also about the personal cost of serving an empire. Behind every shield was a person. Behind every uniform was a life. The life and sacrifice of a Persian soldier. The military camp slowly settles as evening approaches. The sharp sounds of training fade away, replaced by quieter moments that reveal a side of the Persian army rarely shown in stories of battles and victories. The weapons are cleaned. The horses are fed. The armor is carefully stored. The soldiers sit beneath simple shelters, sharing food and conversation as the final light of day disappears beyond the mountains. From a distance, they may appear like an unstoppable force. A symbol of imperial power. A group created only for war. But as you walk closer, you see something different. You see people. Men who have traveled far from their homes. Sons who left behind parents. Brothers separated from families. Friends who now share their lives with people they once considered strangers. The armor may look strong. The person inside it remains human. This is the quiet reality of being a soldier in ancient Persia. The responsibility carried a certain honor. But it also demanded sacrifice. A young soldier sits near the edge of the camp, carefully repairing a tear in his clothing. His weapon rests beside him, but his attention is focused on a much simpler task. A needle. A piece of thread. A small repair that must be completed before tomorrow. You watch him work and think about how familiar this scene feels. Throughout your journey, you have seen the same patience everywhere. The farmer repairing tools. The potter shaping clay. The merchant fixing a damaged strap. The soldier mending clothing. Different lives. Different responsibilities. The same quiet determination. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is abandoned easily. A soldier's equipment represents his ability to survive. A damaged shield. A broken sandal. A weak strap. Any small problem can become dangerous during a long journey. Maintenance is not an inconvenience. It is preparation. You sit near the campfire as several soldiers share a simple meal. The food is not luxurious. A little bread. Some dried fruit. Cheese. Grains. Perhaps meat when supplies allow. Like most people in ancient Persia, soldiers eat according to what is available rather than what is desired. The idea of endless variety is unfamiliar. Meals are practical. They provide energy. They bring people together. One soldier tells a story from his homeland. Another laughs while describing a mistake made during his first training exercise. Someone quietly sings a familiar song from a distant province. For a moment, the military camp feels almost like a village gathering. The difference is that tomorrow, these people may be asked to leave. They may travel hundreds of miles. They may enter unfamiliar lands. They may not know when they will return. This uncertainty becomes one of the heaviest burdens a soldier carries. The Persian Empire created systems to manage its enormous military needs. Troops were organized carefully. Commanders were appointed. Supplies were gathered. Roads allowed movement across vast distances. The same royal road that carried merchants and messages also allowed armies to travel efficiently. Organization made power possible. But organization could never remove the human cost. Every soldier represented a family waiting somewhere far away. A mother hoping for news. A child growing older while a parent was absent. A spouse wondering when footsteps would return to the doorway. War affects more than those who carry weapons. It reaches every home connected to them. As darkness deepens, one of the older soldiers begins speaking about his years of service. His voice is calm. There is no prideful boasting. No dramatic exaggeration. Only memories. He describes long marches across difficult landscapes. Cold nights in mountain regions. Hot days crossing dry plains. The exhaustion of carrying equipment for hours. The challenge of remaining alert when the body wants rest. Listening to him, you understand that much of a soldier's struggle happens far away from the battlefield. The road itself can be an enemy. Distance. Weather. Hunger. Fatigue. These are challenges every traveler in ancient Persia must understand. But soldiers face them while carrying additional responsibilities. They must remain ready, even when tired, even when uncomfortable, even when afraid. Because discipline means continuing when emotions tell you to stop. The old soldier points toward the stars above. He explains that during long journeys, the night sky became familiar company. Soldiers learned to recognize patterns of stars. They used them to understand direction. they looked upward and remembered that the same sky stretched above their homes. The stars became a connection between distant places. A reminder that even far from family, they were still part of the same world. You think about the people you have encountered during this journey. The farmer watching over his fields. The artisan creating beautiful objects. The merchant traveling between markets. The official recording information. The soldier guarding the empire. Each person lives within the same great system. Each person contributes something. Yet each person also carries personal hopes and fears. This is what history often forgets. An empire may be described through dates and battles, but it is experienced through human lives. As the fire burns lower, the soldiers begin preparing for sleep. Some wrap themselves in blankets. Others check equipment one final time. The camp becomes quiet. The same peaceful silence that covered the village now settles over the warriors. Tomorrow will bring another day of training. Another day of responsibility. Another day of uncertainty. You walk away from the camp with a deeper understanding. The reason you might not last a day as a Persian soldier is not because the training is impossible. Not because the weapons are unfamiliar. Not even because the journeys are long. The greatest challenge would be accepting a life where duty comes before comfort. Where preparation matters more than convenience. Where patience and endurance are required every single day. The Persian soldier's strength is not only found in his ability to fight. It is found in his ability to continue. To wake before sunrise. To carry heavy equipment. To travel unknown roads. To protect people he may never meet. To stand ready even when peace surrounds him. As you leave the camp behind, the distant sound of the night watch reaches your ears. A quiet voice calling through the darkness. A reminder that while others sleep peacefully, someone remains awake to protect them. And perhaps that is the final truth about the warriors of ancient Persia. They were not simply defenders of an empire. They were guardians of ordinary moments. The farmer's harvest. The merchant's journey. The family's evening meal. The artisan's workshop. The quiet life that everyone else hoped to preserve. Your journey through ancient Persia is nearing its final stages. But one last challenge remains. Because even after seeing the beauty, strength, and wisdom of this civilization, you must still understand the one thing every traveler eventually faces. Leaving. And discovering what remains after a journey through a world that no longer exists. The final day in ancient Persia. The morning arrives differently today. For many days, you have awakened beneath the same wide Persian sky. You have listened to the sounds of villages coming alive. You have walked dusty roads beside merchants and travelers. You have watched farmers guide water through ancient channels, artisans transform simple materials into beautiful objects, and soldiers prepare themselves for responsibilities most people never see. But today feels different. There is a quiet feeling that your journey is approaching its end. The village looks exactly as it always has. The same mud brick homes stand beneath the early morning light. The same narrow paths wind between courtyards. The same trees gently move with the breeze. Yet somehow, everything appears more meaningful now. At the beginning of your journey, these places were unfamiliar. The simple homes seemed ordinary. The daily routine seemed repetitive. The slow pace of life felt strange. Now, you see something else. You see generations of knowledge hidden inside every action. A farmer opening an irrigation channel is not simply moving water. He is continuing a tradition that allowed communities to survive for centuries. A potter shaping clay is not simply making a container. He is practicing a craft carried through countless generations. A merchant traveling a road is not simply transporting goods. He is maintaining a connection between distant communities. A soldier standing guard is not simply following orders. He is protecting the fragile peace that allows everyday life to continue. The ordinary has become extraordinary. You step outside as the village begins another day. The air is cool. The fields are covered in a soft morning glow. For a moment, you simply stand and observe. A young farmer walks past carrying tools over his shoulder. He offers a familiar greeting. A greeting that once belonged to a stranger. Now, it feels like the greeting of an old acquaintance. This small moment reminds you of how much has changed. You arrived here as an outsider. Someone observing a distant world. But slowly, through shared meals, quiet conversations, and simple acts of kindness, the distance between you and these people began to disappear. Perhaps that is one of the greatest surprises of traveling through history. The past does not feel truly distant when you see the humanity within it. The clothes may be different. The buildings may be different. The tools may be different. But the hopes remain familiar. People still want safety. They still value friendship. They still work for a better future. They still gather together when the day is finished. You walk once more through the village streets. The baker is already preparing bread. The familiar smell fills the morning air. You remember your first day here, when that simple scent felt like an invitation into another world. Now, it feels like a farewell. The baker notices you and offers a warm piece of bread. You accept it with gratitude. There are no grand words exchanged. There does not need to be. Kindness has its own language. Nearby, the potter sits outside his workshop. The same careful hands that shaped water jars days before continue working patiently. He shows you a newly finished piece. It is simple, beautiful, useful, exactly like everything else you have encountered here. The potter smiles when you admire his work. Perhaps he does not realize how much this small moment represents. The value of patience. The importance of craftsmanship. The beauty of creating something that serves a purpose. Further down the road, you reach the fields one final time. The farmer who first welcomed you here is already working. The irrigation channel continues flowing beside the crops. The sound of water moving through the earth is peaceful, almost like a quiet song. You look across the landscape and think about everything required to create this place. The planning, the labor, the cooperation. No single person built this world. It exists because thousands of people, across countless generations, each contributed something small. A lesson learned. A tool improved. A method passed forward. A tradition protected. Civilizations are not created overnight. They grow slowly. Like fields. Like trees. Like rivers carving paths through stone. The farmer hands you a small piece of barley. The same gesture he offered when you first entered the fields. But now you understand its meaning. It is not just a plant. It represents effort. The relationship between people and land. The connection between one generation and the next. You hold it carefully. A simple gift. Yet one that carries an entire way of life. As the morning continues, you begin walking toward the road that will eventually take you away from the village. The path feels familiar now. You recognize the curves, the stones, the trees beside the way. The journey that once seemed endless now feels surprisingly short. Perhaps this is how time works. A place can feel distant when you are trying to reach it. But once memories are created there, leaving becomes difficult. At the edge of the village, you pause. Behind you is the world you have spent these days exploring. The fields, the workshops, the homes, the people. Ahead lies the unknown. You think about the question that brought you here. Why would you not last a day in ancient Persia? At first, you thought the answer would be simple. The heat, the hard labor, the long journeys, the lack of modern comfort. And yes, those challenges are real. But they are not the whole story. The deeper challenge is learning to live differently. A life where patience replaces speed. Where community replaces independence. Where effort is visible in everything you use. Where every resource has value because every resource requires work. Modern life has given people incredible comfort. But it has also created distance between people and the processes that support daily existence. Ancient Persia removes that distance. Here you see where water comes from, where bread begins, how clothing is created, how roads are maintained, how societies survive. Nothing feels automatic. Everything has a story. You take one final look at the village. The sun rises higher. The day's work begins. People continue living, not knowing that someone from another age has been quietly observing their world. To them, this is not ancient history. It is simply life. And perhaps that is the most important lesson you carry with you. The people of ancient Persia were not characters from a forgotten time. They were people like us. They loved. They worried. They worked. They celebrated. They dreamed. Their world was different. But their humanity was the same. The road waits ahead. Your final steps through Persia are about to begin. But before you leave this remarkable civilization behind, one final reflection remains. A reflection on what this ancient world can still teach us today.